Chapter 676. Seeing his big brother Green Leaf God King leave, Mu Qin's expression changed. Brother Mu Qin, you wouldn't be giving up, right? Jiang Fan looked to Mu Qin. Even Zhou Xian looked to Mu Qin. They were most worried that Mu Qin would be influenced by the sudden appearance of the Green Leaf God King and give up at the last moment. If that happened, the 8 great sage emperors would become the 7 great sage emperors. That would not be good. Don't worry, everyone. I won't leave by myself. Mu Qin nodded to the surrounding sage emperors. Only then did Jiang Fan and them feel relieved. Blood Sea Queen, shall we leave? That Azura God King suddenly spoke to the Blood Sea Queen. The Blood Sea Queen Shui Yun and the Azura God King Luo Fan glanced at each other. Smiles appeared on their faces. Let's go. The Blood Sea Queen and the Azura God King were very straightforward. They directly flew toward the relief sculpture tunnel. Immediately, the other 2 God Kings of the Azura Sea, Sun Lian and Lu Lian, followed closely behind. We can't let them take the all-people seal. Jiang Fan shouted. He immediately flew over to the relief sculpture tunnel. Immediately, the other 7 sage emperors also followed Jiang Fan and flew toward the relief sculpture tunnel. The departure of the 8 great sage emperors, the Azura God King, the Blood Sea Queen and the others also caused the other God Kings of the 8 great divine families, Jiangxing, Shintain, Putaitu, Huangfulei and Tangxiang, to follow them. And I will not be joining this battle. Duanmuyu's divine awareness voice transmission sounded in Duanmu Rufing's mind. At this moment, Duanmu Rufing, who had flown to the entrance of the relief sculpture tunnel, turned her head around to take a glance at the distant Duanmuyu. Then, she lightly nodded and sent a voice transmission to Duanmuyu. You can return to the Light Lens City. In Duanmu Rufing's heart, Duanmuyu's strength was not strong. Thus, it would be useless for him to go. It would be better for him to return. Sister Yun, 5 hidden God Kings have already died this time. Could it be that you still want to go to Fog City? If we fight, we might even lose our lives. Since Big Brother Muyu has gone back, let's go back as well. Feng Xian looked at her good sister, Cloud Hidden, and said. Cloud was silent for a moment. Brother Matian, what about you? Cloud looked at Matian. At this moment, the only reclusive God Kings still on Exalted Celestial Mountain were Feng Xian, Yuning, and Matian. Matian took a deep breath and looked towards the relief sculpture passage with burning eyes. Yuning, Feng Xian, you can go back. I don't know how many billions of years I've lived. I'd rather die in a battle than live such a boring life. I still want to fight. Who knows, I might become the new Empyrean. After all, no one can say for sure who the Empyrean is. Matian's words caused Yuning and Feng Xian to fall silent. Swish. Matian transformed into a stream of light and flew down the relief sculpture tunnel. Feng Xian, let's go back. Hidden Cloud sighed. It had only been 30 years since the Exalted Celestial Mountain descended, but far too many God Kings had died. Yuning and Feng Xian didn't feel any hope of becoming an Exalted Celestial. They decided to give up. Xian, to be honest, I don't believe that little brother Qin Yu would die. Come, accompany me to check it out. Blood Demon Queen Yu Cha said with a smile. The God Kings of Azura Sea and Mount Blood Demon had all set off. Only the 2 God Kings of Dual Domain Island remained. One was Floating Mist God King, and the other was God King Puyin. Puyin, are we going or not? Floating Mist Queen looked to Puyin. Puyin lightly laughed. Floating Mist, in Dual Domain Island, I am the only one left from the Buddhist domain, and you are the only one left from the Immortal domain. It's best that we return safely. Otherwise, Dual Domain Island might very well fall apart. This time, the 8 great sage emperors, the Blood Sea Queen, the Azura God King, Sun Lian, Lu Lian, Tangxiang, Jiangxing, Huangfulei, Putaitu, Shintain, Matian, the Blood Demon Queen Yu Cha, Xian. A total of 20 God Kings rushed towards the Fog City. As for Muyu Yuning, Feng Xian, Duanmuyu, Floating Mist God King and Puyin, the 6 God Kings all gave up. 20 God Kings. Inside the Purple Mystic Mansion, Qin Yu saw the God Kings on the water screen teleporting and disappearing from the relief sculpture tunnel one by one. He displayed a smile on his face. Uncle Lon, I'm afraid that the 8 great sage emperors have already arrived outside the Fog City. Prepare yourselves. Everyone, let's enter the new cosmos. Faced with the attacks of the 8 great sage emperors, Blood Sea Queen, Azura God King and them, Qingyu was already prepared. Okay. Jianglan replied with a smile. Jiangli, Kuro, Zhuqiulini Feng, Ho Fei and them all had smiles on their faces. The situation was completely within their control. The 8 great sage emperors, Blood Sea Queen, Azura God King and them might have thought that Qingyu had died or was so seriously injured that he could not move. However, those people had never imagined that Qingyu's soul had absorbed the 8 great origin energies and possessed an astonishing recovery ability. Furthermore, Qingyu's soul was completely compatible with the new cosmos origin energy. This cosmos origin energy is truly miraculous. Qingyu gasped in admiration in his heart. The 8 great sage emperors were only able to indirectly use the cosmos origin energy through the 8 great spiritual pearls. As for the exalted celestial experts, they were only able to use the origin energy. They were also unable to absorb the origin energy with their souls. In a cosmos, only the creator of the cosmos was capable of absorbing the cosmos origin energy with their souls. For one's soul to absorb the cosmos origin energy, it meant that one's soul was connected with the cosmos origin energy. As long as the cosmos origin energy was not destroyed, Qingyu's soul would not be destroyed. Huff! In the several tens of thousands of miles of sky, the endless fog had all dissipated. The 8 great sage emperors, Azura God King, Blood Sea Queen, and a large group of God Kings had all entered the fog city. Qingyu knew that a large group of God Kings had arrived. Thus the city gate of the fog city was not closed at all. Qingyu, Jianglan and them are in that purple mystic mansion. The all-people seal is most definitely there too. Zhou Xian pointed to the purple mystic mansion floating in the sky and said coldly. The Azura God King Luo Fan looked to the purple mystic mansion. After pondering for a while, he lightly smiled, and then flew toward the purple mystic mansion. Once the Blood Sea Queen saw this, she immediately followed after him. You want to snatch the all-people seal first? Jiang Fan's pupil shrunk. With Jiang Fan in the lead, the 8 great sage emperors also flew toward the purple mystic mansion. Immediately, the other 10 god kings also followed after them. However, right at this moment, in the sky above the purple mystic mansion, an enormous black hole with a circumference of 1,000 miles suddenly appeared. This enormous black hole was so deep that one could not see the bottom. No one knew what was on the other side of this black hole that appeared out of nowhere. The purple mystic mansion, that was originally motionless, turned into a ray of light and flew into the black hole. It's one thing for the thunder punishment exalted celestial to act. However, you all still came to chase after me. Aren't you all being too excessive? Jiang Lan's voice sounded from the purple mystic mansion. After that, the entire purple mystic mansion entered the black hole. A large group of god kings flew to the front of the enormous black passage. They were stunned. What was on the other side of this enormous black passage that one could not see the bottom of? At this moment, the 20 god kings started to hesitate. Humph, what is there to be afraid of? There are god kings, heavenly deities, and even some deities in this purple mystic mansion. Even those people dare to enter it? Why would we not dare to enter it? The Blood Sea Queen Shui Yin sneered. She then turned into a ray of crimson light and flew into the enormous black passage. The black passage seemed to be able to devour everything. This Jiang Lan can be considered to be powerful. He was actually able to open a passage between the divine realm and the lower realm. Let's go. The Azura God King Luo Fan laughed, and then also flew into the black passage. Sun Lian and God King Willow Lotus also flew into the black passage. At this moment, the 8 great sage emperors also came to a sudden realization. When they saw the black passage, they were a bit apprehensive. However, after hearing what Luo Fan and them said and thinking about it carefully, they all came to a sudden realization. Haha, that's right. Where could this black passage lead to? The passage from the divine realm to another space. As for the other space, it could only lead to the lower realm. Shintayin laughed out loud. Entering the lower realm is merely child's play. And quickly, that passage is rapidly shrinking. Jiang Fan shouted. Immediately, the 8 great sage emperors turned into 8 rays of light and flew into the Black Passage. Behind them, Huang Fulei, Jiang Xing, Shen Te-yin and the rest of the God Kings also flew into the Black Passage. Thus, the 20 God Kings all flew into the Black Passage. New Cosmos. Inside the Purple Mystic Star. The Purple Mystic Mansion was floating in the air. Qin Yu, Jiang Lan, Zhou Qiulin, Yifeng Kuro, Hou Fei and the rest of the God Kings were all standing in the air. They all had light smiles on their faces. That Black Passage was created by Qin Yu. It was the passage to the New Cosmos. He had deliberately lured these God Kings into the New Cosmos. Little Yu, this move of yours is truly ruthless, Jiang Lan said with a smile. Hou Fei laughed from the side. Ehe, what's there to be ruthless about? Those God Kings are not the slightest bit lenient toward Big Brother. I have already disliked this group of God Kings. Big Brother, this time around, let me properly trample on them. Haha monkey, you want to trample on those God Kings? Isn't that too despicable? To trample on those God Kings in the New Cosmos? Kuro also started to laugh loudly. In the New Cosmos, Hou Fei had been taught the New Cosmos spatial laws by Qin Yu, and now, he had completely comprehended it. In the New Cosmos, Kuro was able to easily control the New Cosmos spatial energy. However, what about those God Kings? In the Divine Realms Cosmos, they could be considered as God Kings. However, in the New Cosmos, their spatial laws were completely useless. Even their time acceleration was useless. The Azura God King and Blood Sea Queen's time stop were also useless. They were also unable to escape through teleportation. In the New Cosmos, they could only allow themselves to be trampled on. Well then, let's not talk anymore. They're about to arrive, Qin Yu said with a light smile. Immediately, everyone looked to the front. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. The Blood Sea Queen was the first to appear in the air. After that, the Azura God King, Sun Lian Lu Lian, the 8 great sage emperors, and a large group of God Kings also entered in succession. The 20 God Kings stood in the air. Qin Yu, you didn't die? Seeing Qin Yu standing in the air with a light smile, the Blood Sea Queen was shocked. The Azura God King Jiang Fan, Zhou Xian and the rest of the 8 great sage emperors all looked to Qin Yu in the air not far away with shock. In their hearts, they thought that Qin Yu should have died. Even if he didn't die, he should have been seriously injured. However, from the looks of it, Qin Yu did not seem to have any injuries at all. Haha. Qin Yu looked to the 20 God Kings with a smile. Welcome God Kings to my Qin Yu's world. Your world. Luo Fan, Shui Yun, Jiang Fan, Zhou Xian and the rest of the 20 God Kings were all confused. Even the space created by the God Kings could only be considered as a space, and not a world. What does Qin Yu mean by those words? Jiang Fan and them all started to frown. Qin Yu, enough of your superfluous words. You've been struck by Senior Thunder Punishment Exalted Celestial's attack. Even if you didn't die, you'd still be seriously injured. Stop pretending before us, quickly, hand over the All-People Seal. That Duanmu Ruffing was the first to shout. Why bother with superfluous words with them? Let's just capture them directly. Zhou Xian shouted coldly. Zhou Xian was the first to rush forward. Jiang Fan, Shen Te-yin Mu Qin, Tang Lan, the 8 great sage emperors all rushed forward. Fuck off scram. Hou Fei shouted. After that, he held the dark cyan single aura stick, and ruthlessly smashed it onto Zhou Xian's body like he was smashing a sandbag. Zhou Xian felt that his entire body was suddenly restricted. He was unable to move at all. He could only watch as the dark cyan single aura stick smashed toward him. Teleport. Zhou Xian wanted to teleport. However, he suddenly discovered that he was unable to sense the fluctuation of spatial energy at all. He was unable to teleport at all. Bang! The dark cyan single aura stick smashed onto Zhou Xian's body. The 7 great sage emperors that came after him also faced the same situation as Zhou Xian. They were unable to teleport and were also restricted. They could only watch as they were smashed. That dark cyan single aura stick continued to smash onto Jiang Fan, Shen Te-yin, Duanmu Ruffing, Mu Qin, Pu Tai Hong and the rest of the sage emperors. Like sandbags, Zhou Xian, Jiang Fan and the rest of the sage emperors were smashed flying by Hou Fei without any resistance. The Azura God King, the Blood Sea Queen, and the other god kings were all stunned. How could this be? The 8 great sage emperors all flew back from afar. Ignoring the blood at the corner of their mouths, the 8 great sage emperors all had expressions of disbelief. Why can't we teleport? Why can't we sense the fluctuation of spatial energy? Why can't we sense the flow of time? The 8 great sage emperors were in a panic. All of you shut up. Otherwise eat this lord's stick again. Hou Fei shouted angrily. Immediately, the 8 great sage emperors grew quiet. They all remembered that the 8 great sage emperors, were smashed flying by Hou Fei like sandbags. Chapter 677. Clouds were drifting in the sky above the purple mystic star. Qin Yu, Jianglan, Jiangli, Zhuo Qiulin, Yifeng, Kuro and them were all standing to the side. They were all smiling indifferently as they looked at these 20 god kings that had entered the new cosmos. What are you all looking at? Even now, do you all still not know the situation that you're in? Hou Fei carried the dark cyan single aura stick and shouted complacently at the 20 god kings. At this moment, Hou Fei was extremely pleased with himself. In all these years, who in the divine realm was capable of pointing at the 8 great sage emperors, the Azura God King, the Blood Sea Queen and them and scolding them? Furthermore, this group of experts were unable to resist. Where exactly is this place? Zhou Xian was the first to shout. Zhou Xian's eyes were filled with endless confusion, anger and unwillingness. With a low voice he said angrily, how could such a place exist? Why is it that the spatial laws and temporal laws are all useless here? In such an enormous cosmos, there are countless spaces. However, no space should be like this. None of them should be like this. Huang Fuyu frowned deeply. His expression was bitter. Once the spatial laws and temporal laws became useless, wouldn't these sage emperors become playthings that could be trampled upon? Jiang Fan, Shin Tuyen, Duanmu Ruffing and them all had extremely ugly expressions. Even the Azura God King Luo Fan, who had always been confident and indifferent, had an unconcealable expression of disbelief and deep worry in his eyes. The 20 God Kings were filled with fear, worry and disbelief. When the spatial laws and a portion of the temporal laws that they relied on the most were actually completely useless in a place, how could they not be terrified? At this moment, the 20 God Kings' state of mind was the most chaotic. Li Er, what exactly is going on? Jiang Fan suddenly said to Jiang Li. Jiang Li was startled and wanted to answer. However, Hou Fei was immediately enraged. He pointed at Jiang Fan and scolded. Old bastard. How dare you speak to my big sister Li Er like that? Fei, come here. Let those God Kings calm down. They're probably all in a mess right now, Qin Yu said with a faint smile. Hou Fei nodded. Afterwards, Hou Fei pointed at the 20 God Kings from afar. Don't you understand the situation you're in even now? Think about it carefully, and understand what attitude you should use to speak to us. Then Hou Fei flew to Qin Yu's side. Looking at the clouds floating around, the air was fresh and pleasant. However, the 20 God Kings discovered that they had been trapped in a small circle of 100 meters. They were unable to fly out of this range. When they flew to the boundary, they would feel a transparent wall blocking them. Spatial prison, a very ordinary spatial prison. Jiang Fan sighed and said. How could the 20 God Kings not be able to guess that this spatial prison was a technique that the God Kings often used to trample on Empyrean deities? As long as one did not completely comprehend the spatial laws, it would be impossible for one to escape from it. And now, the 20 God Kings were trapped by the spatial prison. If someone had told the 20 God Kings that they would be trapped by the spatial prison before this, they would definitely not believe it. They definitely wouldn't believe it. But now, the truth had happened. Spatial prison, this is truly. At this moment, Zhou Xian didn't know whether to laugh or cry. For them to be able to use the spatial prison, it means one thing. The Azura God King was extremely calm. In this damned place, it is possible to use the spatial laws. However, why are we unable to use them? The surrounding God Kings all nodded. Their opponents were able to use the spatial laws. Why were they unable to? Could it be that this Qin Yu possesses a special ability that makes us unable to use the spatial laws and temporal laws? That shouldn't be possible. Putai Hong said with a frown. This group of god kings had completely walked into a dead end. Right now, they were still thinking that the reason why their opponents were able to use the spatial laws, and they were unable to do so, was because Qin Yu had used some special ability. Haha, big brother. How do you think we should deal with this group of god kings? That's simple. We should just kill them. Wouldn't that be very straightforward? Ho Fei's loud laughter sounded from afar. Immediately, the 20 god kings' discussion came to a halt. They are discussing how to execute us? At this moment, the god king Jiangxing was also worried. The numerous god kings all turned silent. This spatial prison is completely isolated from the outside world. Sound is definitely unable to enter. The Azura god king Luo Fan said indifferently. This brat Ho Fei deliberately let his voice in so that we could hear it. The Azura god king Luo Fan and Ho Fei were actually master and disciple. Back then, not long after Ho Fei entered the divine realm, he was taken away by Sun Lian. After that, the Azura god king began to teach Ho Fei. Actually, the Azura god king Luo Fan was not worried that Qin Yu would do anything to him. This Ho Fei is actually deliberately trying to scare us? Zhou Xian said angrily. Jiang Fan's voice was a bit gloomy. No, he is not trying to scare us. I'm afraid that Qin Yu and them are truly discussing how to execute us. In here, we simply do not possess any ability to resist. The god kings immediately grew silent. They all looked toward the distance. In the distance, Qin Yu, Jianglan, Zuoqiulin and them were discussing something. This group of god kings all wanted to hear it. However, they were unable to hear it. Kill that Putai Hong. Oh, that's right, big brother. What about this Duanmu Rafeng? Ho Fei's voice sounded in the spatial prison. Hearing that, the 20 god kings all felt their hearts violently twitching. As for Putai Hong, his expression had also changed. Brother Putai, don't worry. That Ho Fei is deliberately toying with us. Huang Fuyu immediately consoled Putai Hong. Putai Hong laughed bitterly. Brother Huang Fu, how could I not know that Ho Fei is toying with us? Merely, it is also possible that what Ho Fei said is what they are currently discussing. Sigh. Putai Hong's long sigh caused the god kings to grow silent. That long sigh contained an endless amount of powerlessness and unwillingness. However, so what? Other than the panic they felt when they discovered that they could not use the spatial laws and temporal laws. Now the 20 god kings all understood their situation. They were fish on the chopping block. As for Qin Yu and them, they were the chopping block. Whether they were to be killed or tortured, it was completely up to Qin Yu and them to decide. The god kings involuntarily looked toward the direction of Qin Yu and them. There were even some god kings who tried to determine what Qin Yu and them were saying from the movements of their lips. After all, now, Qin Yu and them were the ones who decided their life and death. The feeling of having one's life being controlled by someone else was truly painful. However, no matter how painful it was, they were unable to change this fact. In their hearts, there was an unanswerable question. What exactly is this place? Why is there such a place? This place should not exist in the hearts of the god kings. However, since this place existed, there was a reason for its existence. The existence of this place also caused the god kings to allow Qin Yu to slaughter them. This Qin Yu, how many miracles has he created? The Azura god king Luo Fan said to himself as he looked at the distant Qin Yu who was talking and laughing. Using spatial freezing, being able to teleport under the effects of spatial freezing, being able to teleport directly into the exalted celestial mountain. All sorts of things, Qin Yu had created one miracle after another. And now, Qin Yu had brought them to such a place. And now, this miracle-creating Qin Yu was the one who controlled their life and death. Within the white clouds, Qin Yu and them were currently discussing how to execute those god kings. Big brother, Uncle Lan, there is no need for you all to go through so much trouble. If you all do not have the heart to kill them, then I'll go and kill them. The Azura god king is my master, thus I naturally cannot kill him. Sun Lian is a senior of our ape clan, thus I also cannot kill him. As for that Jiang Fan, although his conduct is truly vile, he is also a father and daughter to big sisterly heir. Thus, I'll spare his little life. As for the rest, I'll kill them all. Ho Fei stood to the side. His eyes were flickering with an ominous glint. The current Ho Fei, upon thinking of how he had killed that many god kings in a single breath, this honor had caused him to become excited. Fei, do not make a ruckus at the side. Jiang Lan berated. Jiang Lan was also a bit angry. This Ho Fei had been enticing Qin Yu to kill the god kings the entire time. According to what Ho Fei had said, it seemed that the majority of the god kings had to be killed. Yes, Uncle Lan. Ho Fei curled his lips, and then stood to the side without saying anything. Jiang Lan, do not be soft-hearted. I think what Ho Fei said is quite reasonable. Humph, that group of god kings had killed their way in one by one. Did they even possess a benevolent heart toward us? Since they were able to treat us in such a manner. So what if we kill them? Zhuo Qiulin's hoarse voice sounded. At the same time, she looked to Jiang Lan with her cold gaze. Once Zhuo Qiulin said those words, Jiang Lan grew silent. If there was a person in the divine realm that Jiang Lan feared, then perhaps it would be Zhuo Qiumei's older sister, Zhuo Qiulin. Qin Yu, if you do not wish to kill them, I can do it for you. Jiang Li, do not think too much about it. That Jiang Fan did not care about your relationship as a father and daughter. I will also take care of him for you. Zhuo Qiulin's killing intent was faintly discernible. As the God King of Death, Zhuo Qiulin did not have any qualms about killing others. Qin Yu smiled indifferently. Well then, Senior Zhuo Qiulin, there is no need for you to try to persuade me. I already have the method to take care of them. As he said that, Qin Yu waved his sleeve. Huff! The spatial prison directly disappeared. The 20 God Kings all felt the movement of the air. Immediately, the group of God Kings started to worry. Their gazes were all gathered on Qin Yu and them. They knew that Qin Yu and them had likely already made the decision to take care of them. Big brother, you've decided? How many do you want to kill? Ho Fei immediately asked. When those God Kings heard what Ho Fei said, their complexions immediately turned pale. They then firmly stared at Qin Yu. They wanted to know what Qin Yu's decision was. Qin Yu did not say anything. Instead, he flew toward the 20 God Kings. Ho Fei, Kuro, Jiang Lan, Zhuo Qiulin, Yifeng, Jiang Li and them also flew over. They flew all the way until they were 10 meters away from the 20 God Kings. Qin Yu, we, the 8 great sage emperors, are bestowed by the heavens and earth. You cannot kill us. Zhou Xian immediately shouted. However, at this moment, Zhou Xian was lacking in confidence. Bestowed by the heavens and earth? Qin Yu smiled. Zhou Xian, do you still remember the first time we met? Zhou Xian was slightly startled. I remember the first time we met. With a wave of your hand, you destroyed an entire city. I still clearly remember the gaze that little boy who was eating Tonghulu looked to me before he died. I have never forgotten that gaze of expectation in my entire life. When I asked you if you were not afraid of the wrath of the heavens after killing so many people, you instead replied me with the words, I understand the heavens better than you. Qin Yu took a long sigh. What's wrong? What's wrong with killing some mortals? Zhou Xian's gaze was cold and detached. He appeared to be very confident. You thought that you understood the heavens. However, in my world, I am the heavens. Qin Yu looked at Zhou Xian with an extremely cold gaze. Now, I declare that you should receive the wrath of the heavens, the punishment of the heavens. Zhou Xian smiled and coldly looked at Qin Yu. You do have the ability to kill me. However, how can the wrath of the heavens be decided by you? Moreover, my Zhou clan is in control of the power of thunder and lightning. We are in control of the ability of the heavens to... Boom! A pitch-black lightning bolt struck down from the sky, and ruthlessly struck Zhou Xian's body. Zhou Xian's entire body suddenly twitched and spasmed. However, he still raised his head to look at the sky in disbelief. No, impossible. It is impossible for the lightning to not be under my control. Die. Qin Yu's expression was indifferent. Gold, green, various colored lightning bolts actually mixed together and struck Zhou Xian's body from the sky. They directly struck Zhou Xian into dust. Only the Thunder Origin spiritual pearl remained floating. After dealing with that Zhou Xian, it is time to deal with you all. Qin Yu lightly smiled as he looked to the 19 God Kings on the scene. Seeing Zhou Xian being struck to death by the lightning, the God Kings' hearts immediately grew tense. Seeing the expressions of the God Kings, Qin Yu lightly smiled and said, Someone suggested that I kill all of you. However, I am not that heartless. Among the 19 of you, there are indeed 4 or 5 that can leave this place without receiving any punishment. For example, Brother Luo Fan and my father-in-law Jiang Fan. Qin Yu looked to Jiang Fan. Hearing those words, Jiang Fan was startled. Chapter 678. Jiang Fan had seen how Qin Yu killed Zhou Xian without the slightest hesitation earlier. Jiang Fan had thought that even if Qin Yu didn't kill him, he would still humiliate him. However, who would have thought that from Qin Yu's words? It seemed like he was planning to let him leave this damned place safely. Qin Yu? Jiang Fan looked to Qin Yu. He didn't know what to say. Qin Yu swept his gaze over the surrounding God Kings. He was able to sense the nervousness and fear in the hearts of the God Kings present. Thus he directly announced, "Among you all, the Azura God King Luo Fan, Jiang Fan, Huang Fuyu and the Blood Demon Queen Yu Cha. These 4 people can leave safely." The 19 God Kings present all had marvelous expressions. This Huang Fuyu was both happy and angry. He was happy because his life was saved. He was angry because Qin Yu actually did not let his brother Huang Fulei go. The 4 people that were safely let go by Qin Yu all possessed their own backgrounds. Luo Fan was Hou Fei's master. Jiang Fan was after all Jiang Li's father, and Jiang Lan's big brother. Huang Fuyu had shown some kindness to Qin Yu. As for the Blood Demon Queen Yu Cha, through the water screen, Qin Yu was able to clearly see the discussion of the God Kings on the exalted celestial mountain. He also remembered the Blood Demon Queen's words. "Xian, to be honest, I do not believe that little brother Qin Yu would die. Come, accompany me to check it out." The reason why the Blood Demon Queen Yu Cha chased after them was not because she wanted to kill Qin Yu. Instead, it was because she did not believe that Qin Yu would die like this. She had only come to check it out. Qin Yu waved his sleeve. Immediately, a black tunnel appeared not far away from them. The 19 God Kings all looked toward this tunnel. They all knew that this tunnel was likely the tunnel to return. This tunnel leads to the divine realm. "Brother Luo Fan, you all can leave now," Qin Yu directly said. "Qin Yu, where's my brother Sun Lian and my sister Lu Lian?" The Azura God King Luo Fan did not leave. Instead, he stared at Qin Yu. He could not give up on Sun Lian and Lu Lian. Jiang Fan also did not leave. Instead, he looked to Qin Yu and said, "Qin Yu, where is my floating snow city's Jiangxing?" He and Li Er are siblings, although they are not blood-related siblings. At this moment, Jiang Fan could only have Jiangxing form a relationship with Jiang Li. "Qin Yu, where's my big brother Huang Fulei? You won't kill him, right?" Huang Fuyu looked at Qin Yu. When Qin Yu saw this, he understood even more clearly. Quite a few of these God Kings were involved with one another. It would probably be impossible to release a few of them by themselves. Alright then. Brother Luo Fan, Brother Huang Fu, I'll tell you how I plan to deal with these God Kings. Qin Yu's voice suddenly became cold. The hearts of the 19 God Kings immediately tightened. Qin Yu's gaze swept past the 19 God Kings. He said coldly, "Other than Luo Fan, Jiang Fan, the Blood Sea Queen Yu Cha and Huang Fuyu, the other 15 God Kings only have 2 choices. One is the path of death. The other is to become the servants of my purple mystic mansion." Qin Yu said with an expressionless face. The 19 God Kings present were all startled. Even Hou Fei, Jiang Lan, Jiang Li and them were surprised. Earlier, they had been discussing who to kill and who to release the entire time. Never had they expected that Qin Yu wanted those God Kings to become the servants of the purple mystic mansion. Sage emperors becoming servants, not bad, not bad. Hou Fei's eyes shined. Path of death? Servants? Shen Tuyen frowned. He looked to Qin Yu. "Qin Yu, if we were to choose to become the servants of your purple mystic mansion, how long would we have to be servants? Could it be forever? It can't be considered forever. Merely, you all would be able to regain your freedom the next time the exalted celestial mountain descends." Qin Yu said with a light smile. "Of course, it is also uncertain whether the exalted celestial mountain will descend in the future. To put it simply, it would be 6 quadrillion years. Among the 15 of you, the majority of you would have to be servants of my purple mystic mansion for 6 quadrillion years. After 6 quadrillion years, you all would regain your freedom. Majority of us. The blood demon Queen Yucha looked to Qinyu. Qinyu, are there any differences among these 15 people? Qinyu smiled and nodded. That's right. Among these 15 people, there are Huang Fulei, Duanmu Rufing, Shen Tuyen, Jiang Xing, Zxian and the Blood Sea Queen. These 6 people only need to be servants of my purple mystic mansion for 100 million years in order to regain their freedom. Huang Fulei, Shen Tuyen and many others heaved a sigh of relief. To God King level experts, 100 million years was not a long time. After all, Huang Fulei and Shen Tuyen's lifespan was 102 quadrillion years. However, being servants for 100 million years was not something that they could not endure. Let's go. Everyone, please follow me into the Purple Mystic Mansion. Let's talk about this slowly in the Purple Mystic Mansion. How about it? Qinyu said with a light smile. The environment of the Purple Mystic Mansion was very beautiful. As the God Kings followed Qinyu and the others into the Purple Mystic Mansion, their hearts slowly calmed down. Qinyu brought the group of God Kings and directly arrived at a garden in the Purple Mystic Mansion. This is the Flowing Water Garden. There are several tens of pavilions in the Flowing Water Garden. In the future, some of the God Kings will live here. Many God Kings suddenly felt that being servants of the Purple Mystic Mansion was not something that was too hard to accept. Servants? Qinyu, what do you want us to do? Putai Hong suddenly said with a loud voice. I, Putai Hong, am the Southeast Sage Emperor after all. No matter what, you can forget about humiliating me. Immediately, Tang Lan, Mu Qin and many other God Kings looked at Qinyu. To experts like God Kings, there were times when they would rather die than be humiliated by others. Qinyu looked at the God Kings and said with a light smile, Don't worry. I'm not that despicable. Once you choose to be servants of the Purple Mystic Mansion, you only need to live in the Purple Mystic Mansion and occasionally guide some of the younger generation disciples of the Purple Mystic Mansion in their cultivation. Alternatively, you can also defeat and drive away those who challenge the dignity of the Purple Mystic Mansion. Apart from that, you don't need to do anything else. Moreover, to the ordinary people of the Purple Mystic Mansion, I will only say that you are people that I invited. How about that? Tang Lan, Mu Qin, and the other God Kings looked at each other. Their eyes were filled with joy. If Qinyu really did that, they would be able to retain their dignity. Only a few people present knew that they were servants of the Purple Mystic Mansion. Outsiders did not know. Tang Lan and the others were also certain that the others would not spread this huge scandal. Of course, some of you are sage emperors. Sometimes you still need to show yourself. Being servants of the Purple Mystic Mansion does not mean that your freedom will be completely restricted. Like this, every 10,000 years, you will have a chance to leave the Purple Mystic Mansion for a year. The rest of the time, you must stay in the Purple Mystic Mansion. Qinyu said. Tang Lan, Mu Qin and the others all relaxed. Under normal circumstances, sage emperors rarely needed to show themselves. Since Qinyu had said that they would be given a year of freedom every 10,000 years, to them, it was already sufficient. Good, I agree. Duanmu Rufing was the first to agree. Among the 15 people, 6 of them were only servants for 100 million years. This Duanmu Rufing was one of those 6 people. She knew that she did not show any mercy to Qinyu. For Qinyu to still do this, it was likely because of Duanmu Yu. Thus, Duanmu Rufing naturally knew when to advance and when to retreat. I also agree. Mu Qin also agreed. One by one, the God Kings agreed in succession. Even the Azura God King, Jiang Fan, Huang Fuyu and them felt relieved. Qinyu had only allowed those people to be servants in the Purple Mystic Mansion. Furthermore, he did not publicize it. This had already caused them to be extremely satisfied. Blood Sea Queen, only you remain. The Azura God King looked to the Blood Sea Queen and said. Indeed, at this moment, only the Blood Sea Queen did not express her opinion. Blood Sea Queen, it's merely 100 million years. You couldn't possibly refuse even this, right? Ma Tian said from the side. The Blood Sea Queen Shui Yin looked to Qinyu and said in a low and deep voice. Qinyu, is it possible for me to talk with you alone? Oh, talk alone? Sure. Qin Yu muttered to himself. In the end he nodded and agreed. Qin Yu and the Blood Sea Queen entered a secluded little courtyard in the Purple Mystic Mansion. In the Purple Mystic Mansion, with a circumference of close to 1,000 miles, there were indeed many secluded and spacious places. Blood Sea Queen, go ahead and speak. Qin Yu looked to the Blood Sea Queen. I do not wish to be a servant of your Purple Mystic Mansion. The Blood Sea Queen Shui Yin looked to Qin Yu and said resolutely. Qin Yu was slightly startled. Blood Sea Queen, you have never been lenient toward me. Right now, I am only asking you to be a servant of my Purple Mystic Mansion for 100 million years. Could it be that this is also not allowed? Not choosing the path of life, you're choosing the path of death? Qin Yu's voice grew cold. It seemed that he was being too benevolent. The Blood Sea Queen Shui Yin immediately shook her head and said, No, that is not my intention. As long as you do not want me to be a servant of your Purple Mystic Mansion, I will tell you. The reason why I gave up on the first-rate Grand Mist spiritual treasure at the final moment. Hearing those words, Qin Yu was unable to help himself from feeling a trace of interest. Back then, the Blood Sea Queen had used Zi Xia and Hong Yun's lives to threaten him to obtain a first-rate Grand Mist spiritual treasure. In the end, he was about to agree to it. Yet the Blood Sea Queen suddenly gave up on it. Why? Very well, I promise you. Being a servant for 100 million years was not a problem for her. Thus, Qin Yu directly agreed to it. The Blood Sea Queen Shui Yin displayed a joyous expression on her face. She was merely giving it a try. Unexpectedly she succeeded. Blood Sea Queen, it is best that you quickly tell me. Qin Yu frowned. The Blood Sea Queen Shui Yin took a deep breath and then said, That is because at the final moment, someone directly sent me a divine awareness voice transmission. He told me not to threaten you, not to threaten Ho Fei and them. Someone sent you a divine awareness voice transmission. Yet you still listened to him? Could it be that he was an exalted celestial? Qin Yu immediately deduced. Was it the Floating Feathers Exalted Celestial? Qin Yu immediately thought of the Floating Feathers Exalted Celestial. Qin Yu already had some deductions in his heart. This Floating Feathers Exalted Celestial was most likely that silver-haired, silver-eyed youngster from back then. If it was him, then everything would be easy to explain. That's right, it was an Exalted Celestial. However, it was not the Floating Feathers Exalted Celestial. Instead, it was the Unfettered Exalted Celestial, who had some friendship with me back then. At this moment, the Blood Sea Queen was extremely straightforward. She directly explained. Unfettered Exalted Celestial? Hearing that, Qin Yu was slightly surprised. It was not the Floating Feathers Exalted Celestial that he had anticipated. Instead, it was the Unfettered Exalted Celestial. This Unfettered Exalted Celestial should be rather considerate toward Qin Yu. Back then in the Mountain Sea Palace, this Unfettered Exalted Celestial had directly appeared and given Qin Yu a spiritual treasure. Why would this Unfettered Exalted Celestial help me and Fei? Qin Yu felt puzzled. Blood Sea Queen, how much do you know about this Unfettered Exalted Celestial? Qin Yu looked to the Blood Sea Queen. Do you know the reason why he helped me and Ho Fei? The Blood Sea Queen muttered to herself. Before the Unfettered Exalted Celestial became an Exalted Celestial, I had a friendship with him. However, ever since he became an Exalted Celestial, I have rarely seen him. Thus, I do not know why he helped you and Ho Fei. Qin Yu nodded slightly. Unfettered Exalted Celestial. A question arose in Qin Yu's heart. Divine Realm. The Purple Mystic Mansion had once again returned to the Divine Realm. The entire Divine Realm appeared to be exactly the same as before. Merely, not many people in the Divine Realm knew that many of the God Kings who stood at the peak of the Divine Realm had actually become servants of the Purple Mystic Mansion. Inside the Purple Mystic Mansion. Big brother, you should just stay here for 100 million years. It's merely 100 million years. It will pass very quickly. Huangfu, you consoled Huangfu Lei. Sun Lian, Lu Lian, the two of you should properly train here. With me in the Azura Sea, no one in the Divine Realm will be able to touch it. The Azura God King Luofen also consoled them. One by one, the God Kings bid their farewells to each other. After that, Jiang Fan and the Blood Sea Queen flew out of the Purple Mystic Mansion in succession. As for the other god kings, they all stayed in the Purple Mystic Mansion and began their lives as servants of the Purple Mystic Mansion. Brother Luofan, please wait a moment. When the Azura God King was about to leave, Qinyu called out to stop him. Qinyu, do you need something? Luofan looked to Qinyu. Luofan did not have much resentment toward Qinyu. After all, they were ruthless toward Qinyu. For Qinyu to be able to do this and still preserve the faces of the God Kings, it was already very good. Brother Luofan, I know that you were entrusted by a person to teach Ho Fei. However, I do not know who that person is. Can you tell me? Qinyu asked. The Azura God King was startled. You're talking about that person? After muttering to himself for a moment, the Azura God King nodded and said, Okay, I'll tell you. The person who entrusted me to teach Ho Fei was precisely the greatest backer of our Ascender realm, one of the 3 great exalted celestials, the unfettered exalted celestial. Unfettered exalted celestial, it's indeed him. Qinyu's eyes shined. Chapter 679. After bidding farewell to that Azura God King, Qinyu returned to the Purple Mystic Mansion with a pensive expression. Qinyu had already guessed that the unfettered exalted celestial ought to have some sort of relationship with Ho Fei. Regardless of what sort of relationship that unfettered exalted celestial and Ho Fei have, it is useless for me to let my imagination run wild. Only by having the two of them meet each other would I be able to understand. Qinyu was frowning. That unfettered exalted celestial is not a god king. Even if I wanted to find him, it would be very difficult. With an intention from Qinyu, the spatial energy of the new cosmos covered the entire divine realm like an ocean. Everything in the divine realm was within Qinyu's observation. 3 great exalted celestials, I am unable to find a single one. Qinyu felt a bit helpless. Suddenly, Qinyu started to laugh. Although he did not discover the 3 great exalted celestials, Qinyu discovered that the God King servants of the Purple Mystic Mansion were all spreading out their divine awareness and contacting some of their experts. Of the 8 great sage emperors of the divine realm, only my father-in-law and Huangfuyu have returned. Among them, Zhou Xian has died. Of the remaining 5 sage emperors, Shinta Yen and Duanmu Ruffing will have to stay here for 100 million years. As for the other 3, they will have to stay here for 6 quadrillion years. When Qinyu thought of this, he started to laugh. Back then, when he had brought a group of God Kings into the new cosmos, Qinyu had racked his brains over how to handle these God Kings. However, after thinking about it, killing the God Kings would merely be a temporary relief. It was better to have these God Kings as their servants. That would be more comfortable. Currently, of the 8 great sage emperors with the highest statuses in the divine realm, 5 of them were their servants. Who had ever possessed this sort of honor? Zhou Xian has died. Right now, the Thunder Punishment City does not have a single God King. As for the Zhou clan, there are quite a few high-level heavenly deities. Who should I give this Thunder Origin spiritual pearl to? As Qinyu walked away, he started to ponder. Light Lens City. In the current Light Lens City, the only God King that was truly residing in the Light City was Duanmuyu. However, compared to the other 7 great holy lands, Light Lens City was considered pretty good. Who would have thought that among the 8 great sacred grounds of the divine realm, only the Floating Snow City, Mount Dazzling Gold and my Light Lens City only have 1 God King each. As for the other 5 cities, even if their God Kings are still alive, they would have become servants in the Purple Mystic Mansion. In fact, all of the God Kings in the Thunder Punishment City have died. Duanmuyu bitterly smiled and sighed. At this moment, Duanmu Ruffing was speaking to Duanmuyu through Divine Awareness voice transmission. Duanmu Ruffing did not conceal what had happened in the new cosmos from Duanmuyu. Of course, Duanmu Ruffing did not know that Qinyu had led them to the Neoverse. Duanmu Ruffing had only told Duanmuyu that it was Qinyu's world. Duanmuyu, your aunt can be considered to be lucky. You have a friendship with that Qinyu. He is only planning to have your aunt be his servant for 100 million years. The 3 sage emperors Tanglan, Muqin and Putai Hong will have to stay there for a total of 6 quadrillion years. Duanmu Ruffing said via Divine Awareness voice transmission. Although those god kings had no choice but to stay in the purple mystic mansion, their divine awareness was capable of covering the entire divine realm. Even if they did not leave the purple mystic mansion, they were still able to use divine awareness voice transmission with their own people. Duanmuyu, your aunt is here. I'll leave the matters of the Light Lens City to you. Duanmu Ruffing continued. Duanmuyu, your friendship with that Qinyu is pretty good. You must maintain this friendship. This Qinyu's strength is truly too frightening. Furthermore, the speed at which his strength increases is even more astonishing. In the future, no one in the divine realm will be able to resist this Qinyu. As long as we maintain a good relationship with Qinyu, the foundation of our Light Lens City will become even more stable. I understand, Aunt. It was not only Duanmu Ruffing. Shintu Yen, Tanglan, Muqin and Putai Hong, these 4 sage emperors were also communicating with their troops via divine awareness voice transmission. However, the people that they were contacting were all palace masters and high-level heavenly deities of their respective sacred grounds. After all, there was no longer a single god king in their sacred grounds. Fan your imperial father will need to enter seclusion training for 100 million years. In this 100 million years, the matters of our flame mountain will be left to you and your uncles. Fan, you should discuss with your uncles about the matters of the flame mountain. Yes, father. Shintu Fan also received his father's divine awareness voice transmission from the flame mountain. Shintu Fan didn't know that at this moment, his father was feeling somewhat grateful toward him. If it wasn't for the friendship between Shintu Fan and Qinyu, how could Shintu Yen possibly only need to stay in the purple mystic mansion for 100 million years? 100 million years versus 6 quadrillion years. The difference between them was close to 60 million times. The 8 great sacred grounds of the divine realm began their unprecedentedly peaceful days. Of the 3 ascender powers, the Azura Sea, Mount Blood Demon, and the Dual Domain Island were also extremely peaceful. They did not cause any battles. That was because regardless of whether it might be the 8 great sacred grounds, or the 3 ascender powers, they all knew one thing. The current core of the divine realm was the Fog City. No one dared to infringe upon the dignity of the Fog City. In the southeastern underground city, what's going on with Imperial Father and Second Uncle? Why aren't they taking care of matters anymore? They even said that they would only show themselves occasionally for the next 6 quadrillion years. They have instead handed the matters of the underground city to us. Putai Fenyan said with a frown. Big brother, the strangest thing is that Imperial Father and Second Uncle are actually not returning to the underground city. A burly man beside him said with a frown. I wonder where Imperial Father and Second Uncle are right now. The divine realm had entered an unprecedented situation of having very few god kings. There were actually only 3 god kings in the 8 great sacred grounds. The Azura Sea only had a single god king. The Mount Blood Demon also only had a single god king. Only the Dual Domain Island had 2. The majority of the god kings in the divine realm, over a dozen god kings, were all in the purple mystic mansion. Compared to before the descent of the exalted celestial mountain, when the divine realm had over 40 god kings, the disparity was truly too great. The scarcity of god kings had led to the high-level heavenly deities possessing even greater authority. Gradually, it became even more difficult for heavenly deities to see god kings in the divine realm. The fact that god kings did not show themselves caused them to appear even more mysterious to ordinary heavenly deities. Inside the purple mystic mansion, the dozen or so god kings were all extremely well behaved. Each and every one of them would frequently instruct the Qin clan's disciples in their training. Normally, they would be quietly training, chatting and so on in the flowing water garden. Those heavenly deities from the 8 great sacred grounds of the divine realm are all confused as to where the god kings have gone to. All the god kings are here. Ho Fei walked into the flowing water garden. As he saw the god kings in 2s and 3s, he displayed a complacent smile. In the entire divine realm, where else could there be this many god kings? At this moment, Qin Zheng was also in the flowing water garden. Furthermore, he was currently asking a god king, Senior, the things that you passed to me a few days ago, these things can only be understood and not explained. You should just slowly train, do not bother me. At this moment, that Putai Hong was playing chess with Shen Tuyen. Without waiting for Qin Zheng to finish, he spoke to him in a somewhat impatient manner. Yes, senior. Seeing Putai Hong acting like this, Qin Zheng stood to the side. He was prepared to wait for Putai Hong to finish his chess game before continuing his questioning. At this moment, Hou Fei, who had just walked into the flowing water garden, saw this scene. Instantly, his eyes widened in anger. In a few steps, Hou Fei walked to Putai Hong's side and fiercely slapped the chessboard with his palm. Bang! The chessboard abruptly shattered. That Putai Hong and Shen Tuyen were both greatly shocked. Putai Hong could not help but raise his head to look at the person who had come. At this moment, Hou Fei directly pointed at Putai Hong's nose and scolded. You Putai Hong, do you really think that you were invited by my big brother to be a guest? Damn it. Just because I gave you some face, you really think that you are who you are? Hou Fei extended his hand, and the dark cyan single aura rod appeared in his hand. Putai Hong and Shen Tuyen immediately retreated. Hou Fei, what are you doing? Putai Hong said angrily. Hou Fei, you should still be more courteous to your seniors. The nearby Qin Zheng advised Hou Fei. When Hou Fei heard that, he was immediately enraged. He glared at Putai Hong and said, Putai Hong, listen up. You came here as a servant of the Purple Mystic Mansion. As a servant, you must have the consciousness of a servant. My big brother gave you face, but don't think that my big brother is weak. Damn it, I should have killed you guys earlier. Immediately, all the god kings in the flowing water garden quietened down. They also understood that they were the Purple Mystic Mansion's servants. However, Qin Yu had told the people from the Purple Mystic Mansion that these god kings were guests invited by Qin Yu. Therefore, Qin Zheng and the others were still very courteous to these people. However, being so courteous caused Putai Hong to gradually have the arrogance of a sage emperor. Servants. At this moment, Qin Zheng looked at Hou Fei in confusion. Hou Fei's gaze swept across the god kings present. He coldly snorted and said, My big brother praised you guys, and you guys really took it seriously. All of you remember this well. Big brother gave you guys some face, so you guys must have some self-awareness. Don't think that all of you are still extraordinary sage emperors. Putai Hong, come over and explain to second brother Qin Zheng. Hou Fei coldly stared at Putai Hong. Putai Hong frowned. Mu Qin, who was beside him, cupped his hands towards Hou Fei and said, Hou Fei, we have indeed been a bit excessive these days. From today onwards, we will definitely not do it again. Putai Hong. Mu Qin looked towards Putai Hong. The god kings present all knew very well that Qin Yu's strength was much stronger than theirs. Hou Fei, I am sorry. My attitude was a bit excessive. At this moment, Putai Hong also softened his tone. That's more like it. Hou Fei coldly snorted. There are very few people in the Purple Mystic Mansion who know that you guys are servants. However, if you guys do not have self-awareness and continue to think that you are infallible, then not only will the people of the Purple Mystic Mansion know, even the people of the Divine Realm will know. The expressions of those god kings all changed. If this matter were to be known by the people of the Divine Realm, then these god kings would likely suffer a fate worse than death. This sort of thing will not happen in the future, Putai Hong immediately said. While Hou Fei was dealing with those god kings, Qin Yu was in the Thunder Punishment City. At this moment, Qin Yu was wearing a blue gown. With a light smile on his face, he was walking on the streets of the Thunder Punishment City. Qin Yu, thank you. There's no need. Actually, I am the one who has let you down by killing the final god king of the Zhou family. I have caused trouble for you, second brother. As Qin Yu walked, he was chatting with Lin Meng via Divine Awareness voice transmission. If you have killed him, then so be it. It's no big deal. Even if you were to kill all of the 8 great sage emperors, there would still be a successor. Those 8 spiritual pearls all contain the spatial laws. You merely need to give the Thunder Origin spiritual pearls to anyone with the Zhou family's bloodline, and they would be able to comprehend the spatial laws in an extremely short period of time. They would become the new sage emperor of the Thunder Punishment City. In that case, second brother, who do you think I should give the Thunder Origin spiritual pearls to? Qing Yu was chatting with Lin Meng via Divine Awareness voice transmission. At this moment, they had already arrived before the Thunder Punishment City's Imperial City. Merely, the Imperial City did not permit outsiders to enter. Who should you give it to? Right now, there is a child within 100 steps of you. I think it would be a good idea to give it to him. Lin Meng said via Divine Awareness voice transmission. Oh. Qing Yu looked to his surroundings. He saw that there was a child curled up on the side of the street not far away. With a single glance, Qing Yu was able to tell that the child's strength was extremely low. He was only a mid-level deity. He should be a disciple of the Zhou family. Otherwise, it would be impossible for a deity to enter the Thunder Punishment City. Qing Yu thought in his heart. With a smile on his face, Qing Yu walked toward the child. When the child who was curled up on the side of the street saw that someone was approaching, he opened his eyes wide and looked to Qing Yu. Why are you curled up on the side of the street? Could it be that you are not afraid of being punished by your parents? Qing Yu said with a smile. Who are you? The child appeared to be more cautious. Don't you know that you should tell others your name before asking for their names? Qing Yu said with interest. The child grew silent for a moment. Then he said, My name is Zhou Qing. Oh, Zhou Qing. In that case, why are you curled up on the ground? Qing Yu asked with a smile on his face. That's because I am about to leave the Thunder Punishment City. Thus, before I leave, I wanted to familiarize myself with the land of the Thunder Punishment City. The answer from the child by the name of Zhou Qing surprised Qing Yu. Why are you leaving the Thunder Punishment City? Qing Yu asked with a smile on his face. I am the disciple with the slowest cultivation speed among my generation in the Zhou family. Thus, I will naturally be banished to the lower regions. Zhou Qing said in a very natural manner. Qing Yu came to a sudden realization. The majority of the 8 great divine families had this sort of rule. However, that was for the sake of promoting the cultivation speed of their disciples and increasing the competition between them. Zhou Qing, you and I are brought together by fate. Thus I will give you something. Qing Yu said with a smile on his face. Give me something? Zhou Qing looked to Qing Yu with a puzzled expression. Qing Yu flipped his hand, and the Thunder Origin spiritual pearl appeared in Qing Yu's palm. With a thought from Qing Yu, Zhou Qing's finger was cut open. A drop of blood flew out from his finger, and directly assimilated into the Thunder Origin spiritual pearl. That Thunder Origin spiritual pearl directly assimilated into Zhou Qing's body. Little Zhou Qing, farewell. Qing Yu stroked Zhou Qing's head. Then he turned around and left. At this moment, Zhou Qing was receiving information from the Thunder Origin spiritual pearl non-stop. At this moment, he was trying his best to open his eyes and look to his surroundings. However, Qing Yu had already disappeared. Zhou Qing said with a loud voice, You still haven't told me who you are. My name is Qing Yu. Qing Yu's voice sounded in Zhou Qing's mind. Chapter 680. Fog City. Inside the Purple Mystic Mansion, Jianglan and Yifeng were currently drinking tea and chatting with smiles on their faces. That Hou Fei is truly tyrannical. The 10+ God Kings were all scared by him, and became much more well-behaved. Right now, all of them are extremely humble. Yifeng said while laughing. The scene of Hou Fei reprimanding the God Kings was something that Yifeng, Jianglan, Zhuo Qilin and the other God Kings of the Purple Mystic Mansion knew about. Merely, none of them stopped Hou Fei from reprimanding them. Jianglan nodded. For Hou Fei to reprimand them, it's not necessarily bad. That's right. Yifeng nodded. Qing Yu is too lazy to bicker with those God Kings. Normally, he would also not demand anything from them. However, these 10+ God Kings had truly treated the Purple Mystic Mansion as a place for leisure. One by one, the God Kings were playing chess and discussing the Tao in the flowing water garden. Each and every one of them were putting on the airs of seniors and experts. Humph, even if Hou Fei did not reprimand them, I would still go and find Qing Yu to discuss this matter in a couple days. Yifeng had already disapproved of this matter. After being defeated, Qing Yu spared the lives of those God Kings, and made them servants of the Purple Mystic Mansion. However, those God Kings were all putting on airs and putting on airs. Uncle Yifeng, Uncle An, so you're here. Qing Yu's voice sounded. At this moment, Qin Yu had just returned from the Thunder Punishment City. When Jiang Lan and Yifeng saw Qin Yu, they immediately refilled their teacups and called for Qin Yu to come over. Qin Yu, sit down and drink tea with us. Qin Yu indeed had something that he needed to discuss with Uncle Lan. Thus he walked over and sat down. Uncle Lan, do you still remember this? After Qin Yu drank a mouthful of tea, he flipped his hand and took out the golden all-people seal that he had seized from the Thunder Punishment Exalted Celestial. Seeing the little golden seal in Qin Yu's hand, Jiang Lan and Yifeng's eyes both shined. All-people seal? Jiang Lan's eyes were filled with unconcealable curiosity. Qin Yu directly handed the all-people seal to Jiang Lan. Uncle Lan, you already have the back earth seal. This all-people seal is also for you. This way, the possibility of you becoming an Empyrean is very high. Become an exalted celestial? Jiang Lan lightly smiled and shook his head. If it was in the past, then I might still want to become an exalted celestial. However, ever since I've been living a peaceful life in the Purple Mystic Mansion, I've been accompanying Qin Shuang and Qin Si, the two children, or chatting with Brother Yifeng and your father. His days were leisurely and comfortable. Now I no longer have any hope of becoming an Empyrean. Qin Yu was stunned. He didn't want Uncle Lan anymore? Then who should he give the all-people seal to? Brother Jiang Lan, Qin Yu also has good intentions. You should accept it. Yifeng, who stood to the side, advised. Qin Yu also looked to Jiang Lan with anticipation. Qin Yu had always felt that he owed Jiang Lan a lot. If he was able to help Jiang Lan a bit, Qin Yu would feel a bit more comfortable. Jiang Lan looked to Qin Yu. He then received the all-people seal. He smiled and said, Amen. I am indeed curious about the description of time reversal in this all-people seal. It's also good to comprehend it first. However, the birth of the new exalted celestial is fast approaching. I truly wonder who the new exalted celestial would be. The birth of the new exalted celestial is fast approaching? What do you mean by that? Qin Yu frowned. From these words, Qin Yu sensed another meaning. Uncle Lan, aren't there only two methods to become an exalted celestial? The first is to obtain the 3 parts of the exalted celestial's spiritual treasure. The other is to completely comprehend the temporal laws. If Uncle Lan and that Azura God King Luofan are both unable to completely comprehend the temporal laws, and are also unable to gather the 3 parts of the exalted celestial's spiritual treasure, then how would the new exalted celestial be born? Qin Yu asked in confusion. According to Qin Yu's understanding, if Jiang Lan and Luofan were both unable to comprehend the temporal laws, and were also unable to gather the 3 seals, then the birth of the new exalted celestial should be delayed. Haha. Qin Yu, could it be that you think that because Luofan and I are forever unable to comprehend the temporal laws, that the new exalted celestial would never appear? Jiang Lan looked to Qin Yu with a smile. Qin Yu was slightly startled. Jiang Lan smiled and continued. That is impossible. Just like last time, when the God Kings were unable to determine who the victor was, the exalted celestials secretly acted. The exalted celestial's spiritual treasure directly flew to the unfettered God King and allowed him to become an exalted celestial. I think that if Luofan and I are unable to comprehend the temporal laws or gather the 3 parts of the exalted celestial's spiritual treasures, then the exalted celestial's spiritual treasure would definitely attack again. I fear that the exalted celestials will once again act. Jiang Lan said with a light smile. Hearing this, Qin Yu thought in his heart. The exalted celestials act? The authority to determine the new exalted celestial is likely not something that the other exalted celestials possess. I reckon that the final act was also ordered by second brother Lin Meng. Currently, the 3 parts of the Living World seal, the Blue Sky seal, the Back Earth seal and the All People seal had all appeared. The birth of the new exalted celestial was imminent. After Jiang Lan obtained the All People seal, he returned to the new cosmos. That was because in the divine realm, even Qin Yu was unable to maintain a space where time was accelerated by 100,000 times. However, in the new cosmos, Qin Yu was able to maintain a space where time was accelerated by 1,000,000 times. The dark curtain of night disappeared. The light of day arrived. It was a new day. Qin Yu and Jiang Li walked out from their room. The two of them began to eat breakfast with their two sons, Qin Si and Qin Shuang. Not to mention those who had reached Qin Yu's level. Even ordinary cultivators did not need to eat. Merely, in the eyes of Qin Yu and them, this meal was not something to fill one's stomach. Instead, it was a kind of gourmet enjoyment. Father, mother, I wish to discuss something with the two of you. Right after Qin Shuang finished eating, he said to Qin Yu and Jiangli. Qin Yu and Jiangli glanced at each other. They were curious as to what this little Shuang wanted to do. Qin Yu smiled and said, "Little Shuang, if you have something to say, then say it." Qin Shuang took a deep breath, and then said, "Father, mother, I know that the Purple Mystic Mansion possesses a channel that leads to the new cosmos. As for the new cosmos, there are many channels that lead to the immortal devil and demon realm, and even the mortal realm. I wish to go to the immortal devil and demon realm, and the mortal realm to play." Go to the immortal devil and demon realm, and the mortal realm to play. Jiangli frowned. Little Shuang, you currently do not even possess the strength of a deity. It's best that you don't rush to go out and play. When you pass the divine tribulation, and become a low-level deity, Mother will allow you to go out and play, said Jiangli. Qin Shuang's face immediately turned bitter. I need to become a low-level deity. Qin Shuang dragged his voice. Second brother, don't be anxious. It's very easy to become a low-level deity, Qin Si advised. Humph, big brother. You became a high-level heavenly deity not long after you were born. Furthermore, with your current strength, I fear that you would even be able to fight against God Kings. I cannot compare with you, said Qin Shuang in a somewhat vexed manner. After that he stood up and left. This child, sighed Jiangli as she shook her head. Qin Yu frowned. Qin Yu knew that Qin Shuang had always had a trace of injustice in his heart. Although Qin Si had also treated him extremely well. Although Qin Si had treated him very well, Qin Shuang's cultivation speed was truly too slow. Little Si, you can leave first. I have something to say to your mother, Qin Yu said with a smile. Yes, father. Qin Si immediately stood up and left. After that, only Qin Yu and Jiangli remained in the room. Puzzled, Jiangli looked to Qin Yu. Brother Yu, what's the matter? It's about little Shuang. Did you not sense it? Qin Yu frowned. Little Shuang is our child. You and I are both God Kings. Logically, little Shuang's talent should be comparable to the children of the 8 great divine families, no? Even the children of the 8 great divine families would generally pass the divine tribulation and become low-level deities at the age of 5 or 6. Not long ago, when I went to the Thunder Punishment City, I encountered a child by the name of Zhou Qing. That child was only 11 or 12 years old. He had reached the mid-level deity level. However, he was the weakest among his generation. As for little Shuang, he is now 20 years old. He has not even reached the low-level deity level. Qin Yu shook his head and sighed. Of his 2 sons, his eldest son Qin Si possessed an exceptionally good talent. However, his second son's talent was exceptionally low. Brother Yu, in that case, what do you think we should do? Jiangli was at her wit's end. Qin Yu muttered to himself for a moment. Then he shook his head and said, changing one's talent involves the essence of one's soul. Even celestials are unable to do that. Let's wait until my new cosmos is completed. At that time, I reckon that I will have a method. New cosmos completed? Jiangli's eyes shined. Brother Yu, how long will it take for your new cosmos to complete? Originally, I had thought that the uppermost layer of the new cosmos, the divine realm, would take about 5 or 6 years to complete. However, I now know that the divine realm actually controls the energy of the countless spaces below. Thus, the formation speed is a bit slow. According to my estimation, it will take about 10 years. Qin Yu also had an estimate in his heart. About 10 years to complete? Jiangli nodded. Then she looked outside the room and said, Sigh. This little Shuang can only wait for another 10 years. Brother Yu, you will be able to help him in 10 years. Children were the heartache of parents. Qin Shuang felt very uncomfortable, because his cultivation speed was extremely slow. Qin Yu and Jiangli also felt very uncomfortable. Merely, there was nothing that they could do. 10 years. After the new cosmos was completed, Qin Yu's remarkable abilities would increase greatly. Time passed. In the second year since Zhou Qing obtained the Thunder Origin Spiritual Pearl, the signs of the birth of a God King once again appeared in the entire Divine Realm. Another God King had been born in the Divine Realm, a God King that could only be considered to be in his youth. The new Thunder Punishment City's Sage Emperor, Zhou Qing, had become one of the few people at the peak of the Divine Realm's pyramid. After becoming the Thunder Punishment City's Sage Emperor, Zhou Qing became even clearer about the battles that had occurred after the descent of the exalted Celestial Mountain. Zhou Qing also understood that Qin Yu had returned the Thunder Origin Spiritual Pearl. It was very likely that the original Northwest Sage Emperor Zhou Xian had already been killed by Qin Yu. In addition, the previous Thunder Punishment City's God Kings, Zhou Ran, Zhou Wulian, Zhou Tong and Zhou Hua, were all killed by Qin Yu. Zhou Qing gasped in admiration of Qin Yu's strength. However, Zhou Qing did not hate Qin Yu in the slightest. Humph Zhou Xian? Zhou Hua? Zhou Qing did not have the slightest bit of affection for the God Kings of the past. The Zhou Qing of the past was merely the lowest rung of the Zhou family. He was even nearly exiled from the Thunder Punishment City. In the depths of Zhou Qing's heart, he felt extremely grateful toward Qin Yu, the person who had allowed him to undergo a rebirth and rapidly change his status. Ever since Zhou Qing became a God King, the entire Divine Realm had once again regained its tranquility. Roughly 3 years after Zhou Qing became a God King, on the streets of the Yuqi City in the eastern region of the Divine Realm. Yuqi City? The city where Qin Yu made his fortune? A light cyan-gowned long-bearded old man was walking on the streets of Yuqi City with a smile on his face. This long-bearded old man had a rosy complexion. His skin was sparkling and translucent like that of an infant. He had an amiable smile on his face. His smile would cause the surrounding people to feel a burst of warmth in their hearts. Never would I have expected that Qin Yu would be able to create such a grand scene in merely several tens of thousands of years. Not bad, not bad. The light cyan-gowned cyan-bearded old man smiled and nodded. With a slight movement of his feet, this cyan-bearded old man left Yuqi City in a couple steps. With a wave of his sleeve, a 7-colored auspicious cloud appeared beneath the cyan-bearded old man's feet. Stepping on the 7-colored auspicious cloud, this cyan-bearded old man's speed was extremely fast. He directly flew toward the foggy marsh. After passing through the foggy marsh, he soon arrived outside of Foggy City. Oh, this Foggy City has guards outside of its gates? The cyan-bearded old man looked to the Foggy City from afar. He shook his head and sighed. The current Foggy City was not a place that anyone could enter as they wished. This cyan-bearded old man's figure suddenly became fuzzy. In the end, he disappeared. When he reappeared, he had already arrived inside the Foggy City. The Foggy City was currently bustling with activity. Amen. Low-level heavenly deity, Yu Xian blinked his eyes in surprise. Earlier, he only felt that his eyes were fuzzy before a cyan-bearded old man appeared before him. Are my eyes playing tricks on me? Yu Xian felt puzzled. May I ask if the city master of this Foggy City lives in the floating city above? This cyan-bearded old man turned around and asked Yu Xian with a smile on his face. Yu Xian was unable to see through this old man at all. He immediately smiled and said, Senior, our Foggy City's city master, Lord Qin Yu, usually lives in the Purple Mystic Mansion. Merely, as I am only a small character, I do not know whether or not he is here right now. Oh, thank you. The cyan-bearded old man smiled and nodded. After that, the cyan-bearded old man raised his head and looked to the Purple Mystic Mansion floating in the sky. Such an enormous mansion, yet it's completely covered in low-level heavenly divine artifacts. Extraordinary, extraordinary. The cyan-bearded old man directly soared into the sky and flew toward the Purple Mystic Mansion. After a short moment, the cyan-bearded old man arrived outside of the Purple Mystic Mansion's entrance. This is the Purple Mystic Mansion. Outsiders are not allowed to enter. That Purple Mystic Mansion's guard immediately shouted. The cyan-bearded old man smiled and shook his head. Have your master Qin Yu come out. At this moment, the housekeeper of the Purple Mystic Mansion, Uncle Fu, also heard the shout of the guard. Upon hearing the words of the person who had come, He was shocked. You want to see Master Qin Yu? Who is it that has come? Uncle Fu directly walked to the entrance. Upon seeing the person who had come, old master. Uncle Fu was completely stunned. A Fu. When the cyan-bearded old man saw Uncle Fu, his eyes shined and his face was filled with joy. Chapter 681. When the cyan-bearded old man arrived before the entrance of the Purple Mystic Mansion, Qin Yu was currently drinking tea, playing chess, and chatting with Jiang Li in a pavilion within the Purple Mystic Mansion's inner lake. As for Qin Shuang, he was quietly sitting by himself in a pavilion not far away. That child little Shuang. Jiang Li took a glance at Qin Shuang in the distance, and then shook her head helplessly. She then looked to Qin Yu and asked, Brother Yu, when should we go and see little sister Yan, Granny Yin Hua and them? It's been a long time since I've seen them. I truly miss little sister Yan and them. Ever since the relationship between Qin Yu and the floating snow city had deteriorated, Jiang Li had rarely contacted her relatives in the floating snow city. It's not good for us to directly go to the floating snow city. How about this in the future? When there's an opportunity, you two sisters can find a city to gather. Qin Yu thought for a moment and then replied. As he said this, Qin Yu felt a trace of guilt in his heart. Back then, when he participated in the public groom search, he ended up failing and forced Li Er to elope with him. He had become estranged from a large amount of relatives in the floating snow city. Amen. We'll find an opportunity in the future. Jiang Li also nodded with a smile. Merely, Qin Yu was still able to sense the disappointment in Jiang Li's eyes. Qin Yu felt even more guilty. Jiang Fan. Qin Yu was pondering in his heart. Him going against the floating snow city was essentially because his relationship with Jiang Fan had deteriorated. Although he had let Jiang Fan go this time around, although their relationship had improved a bit, and they were no longer fighting and killing each other, Jiang Fan had still met Jiang Fan. If Jiang Fan were to see Qin Yu, he would still not pay attention to him. For the sake of Li Er, it's fine for me to give in. Qin Yu thought for a moment, and then came to a decision. Right at this moment, Uncle Fu rapidly walked over from the stone path in the distance. His face was filled with a joyous smile. Qin Yu looked to Uncle Fu with a puzzled expression. Once Uncle Fu walked over, he immediately said excitedly and respectfully, Master old master has come. Old master. Qin Yu was slightly startled upon hearing this. However, after a short moment, Qin Yu reacted. Old master? Wasn't Uncle Fu's old master the legendary craftsman god Cheho Yuan? Senior Cheho Yuan is here? Qin Yu exclaimed in surprise. At the same time, he consciously spread out the spatial power of the new universe. Qin Yu easily discovered the old man with the green beard outside the inner lake courtyard. That indifferent and elegant temperament, that amiable smile. He is Senior Cheho Yuan? Qin Yu was surprised. This was because Qin Yu had discovered a problem. This azure-bearded elder was actually a God King level expert. According to what Qin Yu knew, Cheho Yuan was merely a high-level heavenly deity. When did he become a deity king? Li Fu respectfully said. Master, the old master is right outside. Without your permission he won't dare to enter. Hurry up and invite him in. No, I'll go and greet him personally. Qin Yu immediately stood up. Brother Yu, Senior Cheho Yuan is here? At this moment, Jiang Li also stood up in surprise. If Senior Cheho Yuan is here, Brother Yu and I will go and greet him together. Qin Yu nodded. It is indeed Senior Cheho Yuan. Earlier, Uncle Fu said that the person outside the courtyard is a God King. Could it be that Senior Cheho Yuan has become a God King level expert? Jiang Li was shocked. Becoming a God King? Why are there no signs of becoming a God King? Qin Yu was startled. That's right, becoming a God King. However, why were there no signs of becoming a God King in the divine realm? Every time a sign of becoming a God King appeared in the divine realm, those people would always figure out the identity of the newly born God King. There were simply no signs of Cheho Yuan becoming a God King. Li Er, could it be that you've forgotten? I told you that Senior Cheho Yuan was quietly refining his spiritual treasure in another cosmic space. When he became a God King, I reckoned that he was in another cosmic space of the lower realms. The signs of becoming a god king appeared in another cosmic space of the lower realms. Qin Yu could only guess like this. The truth was exactly as Qin Yu had guessed. Cheho Yuan reached the god king level in a space of the mortal realm. At that time, that mortal realm was filled with rumbling thunder and endless auspicious clouds. However, very few people in the divine realm knew about this. Qin Yu and Jiangli walked side by side along the Bluestone Road. They walked along the winding lake path toward the lakeside. To become a god king in the lower realms, the signs of becoming a god king would only appear in the lower realms. Jiangli frowned. If this is the case, then for some experts that wanted to become god kings, once they hide in the lower realms and become god kings, wouldn't that mean that very few people in the divine realm would be able to detect this? Qin Yu smiled. Li Er, are you stupid? How could it be that easy to go from the divine realm to the lower realms? Even high-level heavenly deities would not be able to go down that easily. Furthermore, before becoming a god king, who would know when they would become a god king? Jiangli smiled and nodded. Becoming a god king was truly too difficult. Qin Yu and Jiangli's eldest son, Qin Si, possessed astonishing talent. After he fused with the Fire Origin Spiritual Pearl, and that first-rate Grand Mist Spiritual Treasure Golden Spear, he became a high-level heavenly deity in his childhood. However, even now, Qin Si still had not reached the god king level. When they reached the lakeside, Qin Yu saw the cyan-bearded old man standing in front of the courtyard entrance and admiring the flower bed. Qin Yu increased his speed. In merely a couple steps, he had arrived near the old man. His eyes were filled with joy. Qin Yu was about to say something when that cyan-bearded old man, who had been sizing up Qin Yu the entire time, spoke. You are Qin Yu. This junior is indeed Qin Yu. At this moment, Qin Yu's attitude was extremely humble. Hearing that, a smile appeared on Cheho Yuan's face. Qin Yu, there is no need for you to address me as a junior. Although I have only returned to the divine realm for a short period of time, I have come to know about most of your accomplishments from my conversations with the Azura God King Luofan. With your current strength and status, it would be sufficient for you to address me as Cheho. This junior would never dare to forget senior's great kindness. Qin Yu was extremely stubborn. The bewitching god temple had provided Qin Yu with a lot of assistance. For example, the divine spear waning snow, and the artifact crafting techniques. All of these had greatly increased Qin Yu's strength. Thus, he was able to rapidly establish himself in the divine realm. Brother Yu, Senior Cheho Yuan has arrived. You couldn't possibly continue to chat with him at the courtyard entrance, right? Come to our place. Uncle Fu, quickly order people to prepare the best banquet. Jiangli instructed Uncle Fu with a smile on her face. Yes. At this moment, Uncle Fu had a joyous expression on his face. Now that his old master had arrived, Uncle Fu was also extremely happy. Senior, this way please. Qin Yu allowed Cheho Yuan to go first. Let's walk together. Otherwise, no matter how thick-skinned this old man of mine is, I would not be able to endure your hospitality, Cheho Yuan said with a smile. Said Cheho Yuan with a smile. Qin Yu was also smiling. Jiangli, Qin Yu and Cheho Yuan walked side by side toward Qin Yu's residence. When Qin Yu and the other two were walking on the road and chatting with each other for only a short while. Haha, Qin Yu, I sense that a god king has arrived in this purple mystic mansion. However, I am not familiar with this god king's aura at all. I have seen the majority of the god kings of the divine realm. This person is? God King Yifeng walked over with a smile on his face. Qin Yu immediately said with a smile. Uncle Yifeng, this person is the craftsman god from back then, Cheho Yuan. Cheho Yuan. God King Yifeng looked at the cyan-bearded old man in astonishment. Brother Yifeng, could it be that you do not recognize me? Cheho Yuan said with a smile on his face as he winked. God King Yifeng was startled. Cheho, since when did your temperament change so greatly? You are completely different from the past you. Qin Yu was also astonished upon hearing those words. From the sound of it, this God King, Yifeng, seemed to be acquainted with Cheho Yuan. Furthermore, Cheho Yuan had changed greatly compared to the past. Temperament changed greatly? Haha, that's right. Regardless of whether it is you or that brother Luofan. None of you were able to recognize me at first glance. Only a Fu was able to recognize me immediately. Cheho Yuan said with a smile. A Fu had followed Cheho Yuan through the divine realm for who knows how many hundreds of millions of years. Thus, he was able to easily recognize Cheho Yuan. Haha, Cheho, compared to back then, the current you is still the best. Back then, you had that cold appearance and that unapproachable attitude of yours. The current you is much easier for others to get close to. God King Yifeng said with a smile. Qin Yu, Cheho Yuan, Yifeng and the others chatted and laughed along the way. Not long after they walked. Why are there so many God Kings here? Cheho Yuan suddenly looked to the flowing water garden in astonishment. Cheho Yuan was also a God King. Thus, he was able to sense that there were many God Kings in the flowing water garden. Senior Cheho Yuan, you didn't know? Brother Luofan didn't tell you? Qin Yu said in astonishment. Qin Yu had heard from Cheho Yuan earlier that he had already spoken with the Azura God King Luofan. Luofan had also told Cheho Yuan about Qin Yu's past deeds. Qin Yu had thought that this Cheho Yuan knew that he had made a group of God Kings into the Purple Mystic Mansion's servants. Brother Luofan? He didn't say anything. He only said that you had fought several battles. What's wrong? Is this related to the fact that you have so many God Kings here? Cheho Yuan had a puzzled expression. Qin Yu, Yifeng, Jiang Li and the others looked to one another. Then they smiled. Evidently, in the Azura God King Luofan's heart, that many God Kings had fallen into the hands of Qin Yu. In the end, the Azura God King was even released by Qin Yu. Over 10 God Kings had become the Purple Mystic Mansion's servants. Likely, Luofan felt that this matter was a great scandal and did not tell others about it. Since the Azura God King did not mention it, Qin Yu also did not wish to expose this matter. It's nothing. I merely had over 10 God Kings come to my Purple Mystic Mansion as guests, so that they could teach the younger generation. Qin Yu said with a light smile on his face. Have over 10 God Kings teach the younger generation? Cheho Yuan was unable to help himself from being dumbstruck. When the Azura God King told him about this matter, he had also mentioned in detail that over 10 God Kings had died in the divine realm. Currently, the total number of God Kings in the divine realm was only that small. And now, over half of the God Kings had gathered in the Purple Mystic Mansion. This was truly too frightening. Cheho, don't think about it anymore. After all, those people were willing to do it. Yifeng said with a smile on his face. Yifeng was also able to tell that Qin Yu did not wish to expose this matter, so as to leave some face for those God Kings. Right at this moment, the sound of conversation could be heard from afar. Big brother Qin Feng. Did you see that? How is the attitude of those God Kings towards you now? Their attitude is indeed very good. They answered all my questions, and even guided my soul to comprehend those concepts. In a short period of time, my soul's realm had increased by a bit. Originally, I did not believe what second brother said. However, after trying it out today, it is indeed true. That's right. We must make those God Kings remember that they are the servants of the Purple Mystic Mansion. We must also frequently remind them. Only then will they be serious and careful when handling matters. Otherwise, they will put on airs again. Ho Fei and Qin Feng's voices could be heard from afar. Big brother. When Ho Fei saw Qin Yu, he immediately ran over with a smile on his face. When Qin Feng saw Qin Yu, his eyes also shined. Third brother. Soon after, Qin Feng also ran over. Merely, when he was running over, Qin Feng turned to Ho Fei and asked. Ho Fei, earlier, you said that they are the servants of the Purple Mystic Mansion. What's going on? Why don't I know about this? Fei, you wantonly spread it again. Qin Yu frowned. Ho Fei said with a chuckle. Big brother, it's fine. I also did not tell many people. In any case, your second brother Qin Zheng already knows about it. Telling big brother Qin Feng now isn't a big deal. Those God Kings are the servants of the Purple Mystic Mansion? What's going on? Cheho Yuan had a dumbstruck appearance. Ho Fei looked at Cheho Yuan. He did not recognize Cheho Yuan. However, seeing Qin Yu, Jiang Li and Yifeng accompanying him, he should be an honored guest. Immediately, Qin Feng smiled and said, Oh, those 10 god kings are the servants of my purple mystic mansion. Cheho Yuan turned his head to look at Qin Yu in a daze. Senior Cheho Yuan, it's nothing. It's just that those god kings were defeated. I spared their lives and allowed them to teach the younger generation, in my purple mystic mansion, as punishment. Qin Yu said with a faint smile. Cheho Yuan was stunned for a good while. Only then did he manage to calm down his chaotic state of mind. In Cheho Yuan's heart, Qin Yu's status immediately soared by a large amount. To have more than half of the god kings of the divine realm become servants. Just how astonishing was Qin Yu's current strength. Chapter 682. In Qin Yu and Jiang Li's serene and secluded courtyard house, only Qin Yu, Jiang Li, Cheho Yuan and Yifeng were sitting down. Only Uncle Fu was standing beside them. As for Hou Fei, Qin Feng and the others, they did not take a seat. After all, Hou Fei and the others did not have much contact with Cheho Yuan. It was not good for them to sit here. Ever since I obtained the bewitching god temple in the immortal, devil and demon realm, I directly ascended to the divine realm. After that, I continued to rise all the way until I became the Misty Mystic Palace's palace master of the utmost eastern region's Mount Dazzling Gold. In the end, I participated in the Floating Snow City's public groom search. Now that I think about it, everything seems to have happened yesterday. Qin Yu drank a cup and said with a smile. Jiang Li, who was at the side, also laughed. She also recalled the days she spent with Qin Yu. In just a short 20,000 years he was able to stand at the peak of the god realm. Since the birth of the god realm, no one has ever achieved such an achievement. God King Yifeng said with a smile. Cheho, by leaving behind the bewitching god temple, you are adding fuel to the fire for Qin Yu's legend. Cheho Yuan had indeed helped Qin Yu a lot. In the end, Qin Yu had a flash of inspiration in the Tao of Array Formations, and he created the Array Formation universe. In the end he became the new craftsman god. There was also the treasure that Cheho Yuan had left for Qin Yu, like the divine spear waning snow. Of course, the reason why the divine spear waning snow was so powerful was because it had absorbed the mysterious yellow qi. Otherwise, the original divine spear waning snow would only possess the might of a second-rate grand miss spiritual treasure. How could it possibly possess a might that surpassed that of a first-rate grand miss spiritual treasure? The path of refining requires talent, time, and the accumulation of experience. In a short 20,000 years, even though he has been training in a region where time is accelerated by 10,000 times, it is still inconceivable, Cheho Yuan exclaimed in admiration. Qin Yu humbly replied, in terms of weaponsmithing, there's still quite a large disparity between junior and senior Cheho. That's not necessarily true, Yifeng said with a smile. You're also capable of refining first-rate grand miss spiritual treasures. Furthermore, you're capable of refining more than one first-rate grand miss spiritual treasure. This Cheho has only forged a single weapon before. Your weaponsmithing prowess might be higher than Cheho. This god king Yifeng had some friendship with Cheho Yuan back then. There was no need for him to hold back too much when speaking with Cheho Yuan. Yifeng you? Cheho Yuan smiled and shook his head. Had it been back when I had just left the divine realm for the immortal, devil and demon realm, I truly wouldn't dare to say that my ability in artifact crafting was comparable to yours, Qin Yu. But now, Cheho Yuan stroked his green beard contentedly. Oh, what's wrong now? Could it be that you've improved greatly and refined an Empyrean spirit treasure? Divine King Yifeng said with a smile. Qin Yu's heart skipped a beat. Back then in the bewitching god temple, Qin Yu discovered that Cheho Yuan had left behind a message stating that Cheho Yuan wanted to pursue the pinnacle of artifact refinement. He would not give up until he had refined an Empyrean spirit treasure. Qin Yu looked at Cheho Yuan, who was smiling contentedly. He couldn't help but be secretly alarmed. Cheho Yuan's strength has advanced by leaps and bounds. He has reached the God King level. After hearing what Uncle Yifeng said, Cheho Yuan's temperament has also changed greatly. Could it be that Cheho Yuan has truly refined an Empyrean spirit treasure? Qin Yu had already witnessed the might of an Empyrean spirit treasure. A single sword strike from the Origin Sin sword had caused Qin Yu to suffer immensely. Cheho, that expression of yours, Could it be that you've truly refined an Empyrean spirit treasure? God King Yifeng looked to the current Cheho Yuan in astonishment. The current Cheho Yuan was stroking his beard and smiling. He had an appearance of contentment. Qin Yu looked to Cheho Yuan and said, I remember that Senior Cheho had said that he wanted to search for all kinds of materials to pursue the pinnacle of artifact refinement. He would definitely not give up until he had refined an Empyrean spirit treasure. Now that Senior Cheho has returned to the divine realm, could it be that he has truly succeeded? Yifeng and Qin Yu said these words in succession. Jiang Li, who stood to the side, also looked to Cheho Yuan in shock. At this moment, Cheho Yuan laughed. He turned his gaze to Qin Yu, Jiang Li and Yifeng. Then, with a low and mysterious voice, he said, This old man has exhausted his soul to the pinnacle. In the end, the heavens have truly not let me down. Ha 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 ha. As he said those words, Cheho Yuan started to laugh again. You've truly refined an Empyrean spirit treasure? God King Yifeng cried out in surprise. Qin Yu and Jiang Li glanced at each other. Disbelief and astonishment were present in their eyes. First-rate grandmas spiritual treasures were already extremely difficult to refine. Even for Qin Yu, he would need to reach the pinnacle of all kinds of conditions in order to refine a first-rate grandmas spiritual treasure. As for an Empyrean spirit treasure, although Qin Yu had some thoughts about it, he was unwilling to part with the profound yellow energy. I reckon that one must rely on the profound yellow energy to nurture an Empyrean spirit treasure, Qin Yu thought. Qin Yu knew that since he possessed the profound yellow energy, he would be able to increase the quality of the Empyrean spirit treasures he refined. However, what about Cheho Yuan? Cheho Yuan did not possess the profound yellow energy. Thus, how could he possibly refine an Empyrean spirit treasure? Qin Yu, the Empyrean spirit treasure that I've refined is comparable to the miracle that you've created, right? Cheho Yuan said to Qin Yu with a mocking smile. When I think of the dozen-plus God King servants in your purple mystic mansion, my heart is still trembling. To obtain Cheho Yuan's personal confirmation, it would appear that Cheho Yuan had truly managed to refine an Empyrean spirit treasure. Empyrean spirit treasure. A God King had managed to refine an Empyrean spirit treasure. Cheho, you really managed to refine an Empyrean spirit treasure? Oh, come, quickly take it out and broaden our horizons. Truth be told, I have yet to truly see an Empyrean spirit treasure. Of course, the Back Earth Seal and All People Seal are not counted. A few years ago, the Thunder Punishment Exalted Celestial acted against Qin Yu. However, the Origin Sin Sword's movements were too fast. I only managed to catch a glimpse of a sword chi. I didn't even manage to catch a glimpse of the Origin Sin Sword shadow. What a pity, what a pity. Yifeng sighed from the side. Qin Yu and Jiang Li also looked at Cheho Yuan. Senior Cheho, can you let us take a look at your Empyrean spirit treasure? Qin Yu was also filled with anticipation in his heart. He especially wanted to know what an Empyrean spirit treasure that was refined from various materials would look like. Cheho Yuan looked at Qin Yu, Yifeng and Jiang Li. In the end he smiled and said, Very well. Since you all wish to see it so much, I will let you all see this treasure that I've spent so much effort on. Cheho Yuan flipped his hand. Suddenly, a pitch-black spiritual bead floated above Cheho Yuan's palm. This spiritual bead was not large. It was roughly the size of a quail egg. When Qin Yu saw this black spiritual bead, he immediately felt the surrounding space trembling slightly. Qin Yu felt a burst of pressure in his heart. This pressure was caused by this black spiritual bead. As expected of an Empyrean spirit treasure, Qin Yu's heart trembled. Jiang Li and Yifeng also sensed the extraordinariness of this ordinary-looking black spiritual bead. Cheho Yuan's gaze was focused on the black spiritual bead above his palm. His eyes were filled with pride. This Empyrean spirit treasure is something that I have traveled through millions of mortal realms and collected countless peculiar materials. After that, I spent endless effort and even risked my soul to refine this Empyrean spirit treasure, the Fixed Origin Bead. Fixed Origin Bead? Qin Yu and the others all memorized this name. This was the first time an inhabitant of the divine realm had refined an Empyrean spirit treasure with their own strength. In the past, the Empyrean spirit treasures were all bestowed by the heavens and earth. No one could refine them by themselves. Senior Cheho, earlier, you said that you risked your soul to refine it. What do you mean by that? Qinyu asked in puzzlement. Cheho Yuan smiled. Qinyu, when you saw the message I left behind in the Bewitching God Temple, do you remember that I once said that I had a feeling that the moment I refined an Empyrean spirit treasure, it would be the moment my soul would be destroyed? Qinyu nodded. Cheho Yuan sighed and said, what I said was not a groundless statement. Rather, it was a sudden feeling in my heart after I swore to the heavens and earth that I would not give up until I refined an Empyrean spirit treasure. However, that feeling was very vague. Only later on, when I actually refined an Empyrean spirit treasure, did I understand everything. Cheho Yuan had a smile on his face. In order to refine an Empyrean spirit treasure, one must fuse their soul with it. At that time, when I was refining it, I only wanted to refine an Empyrean spirit treasure. Even if I were to die, I would not care. Cheho Yuan sighed. Qinyu, Jiang Li and Yifeng could not help but feel admiration for Cheho Yuan's persistence in their hearts. Merely, this fixing origin pearl is truly miraculous. I originally thought that I would undoubtedly die. However, who would have thought that this fixing origin pearl would actually fuse with my soul? I did not die. At the same time, this fixing origin pearl did not undergo any refinement and directly became my weapon. Cheho Yuan smiled helplessly and said, I am simply unable to gift this Empyrean spirit treasure to others. That is because my soul is one with this Empyrean spirit treasure. If I were to forcefully make this fixing origin pearl become an ownerless item, my soul would be destroyed on the spot. Qinyu also nodded his head. Cheho Yuan's refining method could not be said to be good or bad. However, I am extremely confident that the might of this fixing origin pearl is too great. It is so great that even if I were to face an Empyrean, I would not fear it in the slightest. Cheho Yuan's face was filled with confidence. Qinyu and the others were shocked. Cheho, aren't your words a bit too exaggerated? You are not even afraid of an Empyrean? You must know that an Empyrean also has an Empyrean spirit treasure. Moreover, if he were to use time stop, he would most likely be able to stop you. Yifeng said with a smile. Cheho Yuan smiled faintly and shook his head. No, you all do not understand this fixing origin pearl of mine. Cheho Yuan's face was filled with absolute confidence. Qinyu and the others could not help but listen attentively. The fixing origin pearl's attacking ability is very ordinary. It is smashing. Cheho Yuan said with a smile. This fixing origin pearl's speed is extremely fast. No matter what, once it smashes, it would most likely shatter. Smashing? Qinyu and the others looked at each other speechlessly. Smashing someone with a black pearl. Was its might really that great? Yifeng frowned and said, Cheho, I just said that once an Empyrean uses time stop and attacks you with an Empyrean spirit treasure, how would you block it? Didn't you say that you are not afraid of an Empyrean? Cheho Yuan smiled and said, this is the second ability of the fixing origin pearl. The fixing origin pearl's attacking ability is to smash. As for its other ability, it is to let people hide inside it. Hide inside? Spatial spirit treasure? Jiang Li said in astonishment. Cheho Yuan shook his head and said, it is very similar to a spatial spirit treasure. However, it cannot be considered a spatial spirit treasure. Moreover, the spatial laws cannot be used within the fixing origin pearl. In there is only the starry sky, stars, dark stars, and so on. Qinyu, Jiang Li and the others were all stunned. The interior of the fixing origin pearl was actually a cosmic space? Moreover, the spatial laws cannot be used? Could it be that this is the same as the new cosmos? Qinyu could not help but be suspicious. Senior Cheho, I wonder if there are other spatial laws within the fixing origin pearl? Qinyu could not help but ask. Other spatial laws? Cheho Yuan shook his head in confusion. What do you mean by this? The interior of the fixing origin pearl is merely an extremely large cosmic space. In there, the spatial laws are useless. Naturally, there would not be any other spatial laws. Senior Cheho, what methods are there to enter the fixing origin pearl? Qinyu asked again. Cheho Yuan smiled and said, it is simply impossible for others to enter the fixing origin pearl by themselves. Only I am able to enter it through teleportation. As for others, as long as they do not resist, I am also able to bring them in. As for me, I am not afraid of exalted celestials. It is because the exalted celestial's spiritual treasure, the fixing origin pearl, is compatible with my soul. Under time stop, my soul will not stop. I have a feeling that as long as I wish, I will be able to return to the fixing origin pearl. The fixing origin pearl can be considered to be my home, my world. Cheho Yuan said with a smile. Qin Yu suddenly had a feeling. Why did this fixing origin pearl of Cheho Yuan resemble his new cosmos so much? If one were to speak of differences, then this fixing origin pearl would likely only be a cosmic space. As for the new cosmos, it possessed countless spaces. At the same time, it also possessed the cosmos source energy and so on. Furthermore, it possessed its own spatial laws and temporal laws. Furthermore, the new cosmos was capable of establishing a channel with the divine realm's cosmos. However, the fixing origin pearl was unable to do so. This fixing origin pearl could be considered to be an enormous cosmic space. It is much larger than even the divine realm. With a smash from it, even a first-rate grand mist spiritual treasure would be shattered. Cheho Yuan said confidently, if I were to teleport into the fixing origin pearl, and then control the fixing origin pearl to smash others, tell me, who would I fear? Chapter 683. Of course, this only means that I am not afraid of Empyrean experts. It does not mean that I can defeat Empyreans. After all, Empyreans will not stand there and let me smash them. However, the defense of my fixed elemental pearl should be very strong. Cheho Yuan said with a smile. In the end, Cheho Yuan said some humble words. Empyrean spiritual treasure, Empyrean spiritual treasure. God King Yifeng sighed twice and nodded with a smile. Brother Cheho, the admiration I have for you right now is indescribable with words. Come, let me toast you. God King Yifeng smiled and raised his cup. Obtaining an Empyrean spiritual treasure did not mean that one would be able to fight against an Empyrean. After all, whether a weapon was good, it also depended on the strength of the person using the weapon. For example, although Qin Yu possessed the divine spear Waning Snow, if he were to fight against Empyrean Thunder Punishment head-on, he would not have much hope. After the banquet, Cheho Yuan was persuaded by Qin Yu and others to stay in the Purple Mystic Mansion. After all, in the Purple Mystic Mansion, there was Ah Fu whom Cheho Yuan was familiar with. There was also Qin Yu who could be considered his successor. There was also his old friend God King Yifeng. Moreover, there were also many sage emperors and god kings that he knew in the Flowing Water Garden. After Cheho Yuan stayed in the Purple Mystic Mansion for about a year, a major event happened in the Purple Mystic Mansion. I don't know what happened, but Ho Fei actually got married again. Last time, Ho Fei got married to Zixia. This time, he got married to Hong Yin. Although Qin Yu knew about the dispute between Ho Fei and Hong Yin, he did not interfere. After fighting for so many years, these two enemies finally got together. Speaking of which, among the three brothers Qin Yu, Kuro and Ho Fei, only Ho Fei had 2 wives. Putting aside the hustle and bustle on the wedding day, a very strange thing happened. This Zixia and Ho Fei have been husband and wife for many years. However, they are not pregnant. I didn't expect Hong Yin to get pregnant right after she got married to Ho Fei. Not only is Hong Yin pregnant, even Zixia is pregnant. This matter is really strange, Kuro said with a smile. At this moment, Qin Yu, Kuro, and Ho Fei were drinking and chatting. Fei, you are really amazing. Qin Yu also smiled and gave him a thumbs up. Ho Fei didn't blush. Instead, he smiled proudly. It's just eso. Big brother already has 2 children. It's nothing for me to have 2. After that, the mixed hair bird even had grandchildren. That's right, big brother, mixed hair bird. I estimate that my 2 children will be born in 8 to 9 months. Tell me, what should I name my 2 children? Name? Let me think. Kuro immediately began to think. At this moment, Qin Yu suddenly frowned. That was because Qin Yu suddenly sensed that Uncle Lan had actually come out from the new cosmos. Coming out from the new cosmos was one thing. However, Uncle Lon did not return to the Purple Mystic Mansion, and instead went to another place. Uncle Lon has only obtained the All-People Seal for a short period of time. He should be in seclusion training to comprehend it. How did he come out from the new cosmos so quickly? Qin was puzzled. Everything that happened in the new cosmos could not escape Qin detection. Thus, when Jianglong came out, Qin naturally knew about it. I've thought of it. The male will be called Ho-in. The female will be called Ho-in. Kuroa's voice sounded. Qin stopped thinking about Jianglong. Uncle Lon naturally had the freedom to do whatever he wanted. Qin would also not ask about it. Kuro, to be honest, the names you gave are truly vulgar. Qin smiled and began to join the discussion of the names of the three brothers' future children. Asterisk 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 utmost northern regions floating snow city. This was a black city that was bathed in an endless amount of snow. However, it contained a trace of poignant romance. The heavenly deities of the floating snow city were still the same as before. The successive God-King battles did not affect the heavenly deities much. Inside the Sage Emperor's palace of the floating snow city, the wife of the utmost north Sage Emperor Jiangfan, Chunyu, stood outside the study room and pondered for a long time. Only then did she lightly knock on the door. Her husband Jiangfan was in the study room. Ever since Jiangfan returned to the floating snow city 4 years ago, he had stayed in the study room by himself. Normally he would not speak much. Even his son and daughter were unable to see him. In the entire floating snow city, only Chunyu was able to speak with Jiangfan. Creak. The wooden door opened. Sunlight shone through the open door into the study room. However, the inside of the study room seemed to be a forbidden area for sunlight. The entire study room was enveloped by a layer of gloomy and cold oppression. That Jianglan's figure was also hidden within the darkness. Chunyu sighed in her heart. However, she displayed a smile on her face. She directly walked into the study room. Right after she entered, the door to the study room closed. Husband, there is no need for you to lament yourself every day. Actually, compared to other places, our floating snow city is already a lot better. I've heard that most of the God Kings in other cities have died. In fact, those cities do not even have a single God King. Our floating snow city is truly very good, Chunyu said with a smile. Jiangfan, who had been silent for a long time, heard what his wife said, and displayed a smile on his face. My wife, you only know how to make me feel better. What you said is correct. Compared to other cities, our floating snow city could indeed be considered to be fortunate. I could also be considered to be the tall man among a group of dwarves, Jiangfan said with a self-mocking smile. Chunyu was secretly delighted. After these days she had come to chat and joke with Jiangfan unceasingly. The current Jiangfan was no longer as silent and autistic as he was when he first returned. My wife. Jiangfan raised his head and looked to Chunyu. Say, did I make a mistake back then? Back then, for Li Er's husband, I chose Zhou Xian. Was I wrong? Jiangfan's heart was no longer firm enough. Husband, you've already made your decision. Even if you regret it, it would be useless. Why must you continue to live in the pain of regret? After all, husband, you're still the utmost North Sage Emperor. There's nothing for you to lose. Chunyu consoled. Jiangfan nodded. Sigh merely, I've always felt a bit unreconciled in my heart. Jiangfan recalled how the all-people seal that could be considered as his possession ended up being obtained by Qinyu. He felt a sharp pain in his heart. He had dreamt of becoming an exalted celestial for so many years. In order to become an exalted celestial, Jiangfan was willing to give up a lot. He even did not hesitate to fall out with his own brother and break apart the relationship between him and his daughter. All of this was for the sake of becoming an exalted celestial. When one had paid a lot and expected a lot, it would also be very painful when one failed. Originally, I had thought that there would definitely be no accidents if the Thunder Punishment Exalted Celestial were to act. I was filled with confidence. However, I didn't expect that Qinyu would act in the end. Sigh. The higher one's expectation is, the more miserable one will fall when one fails. When he thought of this matter, Jiangfan felt a twitching pain in his heart. It was truly painful. Husband, if you cannot become an exalted celestial, then you cannot become an exalted celestial. That Qin Yu could be said to have held some sort of affection for you. In the future, as long as we do not go and provoke him, I reckon he would also not come and provoke us. Chun Yu consoled. Jiang Fan smiled bitterly. The grand utmost North Sage Emperor. How grand was his status? Never would he have expected that he would fall to the point where he needed Qin Yu's pity in order to live comfortably. Wife, when I appeared in the divine realm, I managed to comprehend the spatial laws faster than my second brother Jianglan, and thus became the utmost North Sage Emperor. I have been that utmost North Sage Emperor for a total of 102 quadrillion years now. Jiang Fan laughed at himself. Wife, do you know what I have been thinking about in the depths of my heart all these years? What? Chun Yu frowned. According to what she knew, what this husband of hers wanted the most was to become an exalted celestial. Chun Yu already knew about this. She did not know why this utmost North Sage Emperor Jiang Fan would ask about it. You ought to know that in these countless years, I have wanted to become an exalted celestial. However, what I wanted to know in the depths of my heart was who my parents were? Where exactly did I come from? Jiang Fan shook his head and sighed. Chun Yu looked to Jiang Fan in a daze. Jiang Fan took a deep breath. 102 quadrillion years ago, when the divine realm was born, my second brother, third brother and I appeared in the divine realm. Merely, at that time, none of us possessed the memories of our childhood. All we knew was that we were blood brothers. We did not know anything else. For 102 quadrillion years, I have been thinking the entire time. Who are my parents? Exactly how was I born? Could it be that I was born by the world? Back then, I had been thinking the entire time about how to find out about my origins. Later on, I thought about becoming an exalted celestial. Exalted celestials are much more powerful than god kings. Thus they ought to know more. I reckon that after becoming an exalted celestial, I would be able to know where I, the first generation of our 8 great divine families, came from. Jiang Fan laughed at himself. Chun Yu was also confused. Of the first generation of the 8 great divine families, other than the Thunder Punishment exalted celestial, who possessed an even higher seniority in the Thunder Punishment City, the other first generation of the 8 great divine families all seem to be born out of thin air. Jiang Fan, Jiang Lan, Huang Fuyu, Huang Fulei, Huang Fuliuxiang, Shen Tiyan, Shen Tain, a large group of first-generation disciples of the 8 great divine families. Who exactly were their parents? Could it be that they were born out of thin air? Or perhaps they were born by the world? This question was a publicly accepted riddle of the upper echelons of the divine realm. No one knew how the first generation of the 8 great divine families were born. This question was something that could not be investigated. Husband, didn't you communicate with the Thunder Punishment exalted celestial before? Could it be that you cannot ask him? Chun Yu asked in confusion. Jiang Fan laughed at himself. Humph, the Thunder Punishment exalted celestial? How could he possibly tell us? I had once tried to ask him. However, he merely reprimanded me and even ordered me to not ask him about it again. I have a feeling that he knows about our origins. However, he refused to tell us. Thus, I truly wish to become an exalted celestial. Chun Yu nodded her head. Suddenly, why have you come here? Jiang Fan suddenly frowned. He looked to this person who had suddenly appeared in the study room. The person who had come was wearing a blue gown. It was precisely Jiang Lan. Jiang Lan looked to Jiang Fan. His gaze was tranquil. Big brother. Jiang Fan was startled. You called me big brother? Jiang Fan was truly shocked. Ever since he had chosen Zhou Xian as his husband, this Jiang Lan could be considered to have broken off all relations with him. It was practically impossible for him to call him big brother. At this moment, Chun Yu who stood to the side was also filled with shock. Jiang Lan lightly smiled as he looked to Jiang Fan. Big brother, we are after all brothers that have grown up since childhood and have been together for 100 quadrillion years. Although I harbor resentment toward you, now that little you and Li Er are together, I believe that there is no need for us to continue to oppose each other like this. There is also no need for you all to continue to be in a deadlock with little you and Li Er. A layer of coldness covered Jiang Fan's face. Oh, you've come to persuade me? Jiang Fan smiled coldly. Second brother, I am unable to take back the words that I had said back then. Back then, in front of all those god kings, I had publicly announced that Zhou Xian was my son-in-law. No matter what, I am unable to face Qin Yu now. There is no need for you to continue saying this. Why are you this stubborn? Jiang Lan was a bit angry. Jiang Fan frowned. He looked to his second brother Jiang Lan. Jiang Lan stared at Jiang Fan. Big brother, Li Er has been unable to return to her home all these years. She is unable to meet with her sisters, her brothers, her relatives and friends. Do you know how painful it is for her? Could it be that your daughter cannot even match up to your face? Jiang Fan was startled. He became speechless. Jiang Lan frowned. With a flip of his hand, two seals appeared in his hand. One was a gray-colored seal, whereas the other was a golden-colored seal. These are. Jiang Fan's eyes immediately shined. These are the Back Earth seal and the All People seal. I know that you want them very much. I am able to give them to you right now. I merely wish that you would be able to treat Li Er and them a bit better, and stop opposing each other. With a flip of his hand, the Back Earth seal and All People seal flew into Jiang Fan's hand. Jiang Fan looked at this scene in a daze. Chunyu Ro beside him was also shocked. How could Jiang Fan not know how precious the Back Earth seal and All People seal were? For the sake of these two seals, countless god kings had died. Yet now, Jiang Lan had actually delivered these two seals to them. Second brother Yu. Jiang Fan was a bit speechless. After receiving these, your wish is satisfied. I wish that you would stop opposing Li Er, little Yu and them. Jiang Lan looked to Jiang Fan. Jiang Fan took a deep breath. He looked to Jiang Fan. Second brother, could it be that you've forgotten that it was I who stopped you from saving Zhuqiumei? Could it be that you do not resent me? You're even willing to give me the hope of becoming an exalted celestial? The shock that Jiang Lan had given the Back Earth seal and All People seal to Jiang Fan was enormous. Resent? Of course I do. Jiang Lan smiled indifferently. Merely, big brother, you must understand. The dead are already dead. To make the living happier is the most important thing. I merely wish for Li Er and them to be happier. As their elder, I am already extremely happy. Jiang Fan's expression changed. Madam, tomorrow bring Yen Juner and them to the Fog City and visit Li Er and them for me. Jiang Fan suddenly said to Chunyu Ro beside him. Chapter 684. On that day, Jiang Lan returned to the Purple Mystic Mansion. After he returned to the Purple Mystic Mansion, Jiang Lan happily chatted with Cheho Yuan for half a day. Jiang Lan and Cheho Yuan had become old acquaintances. The next day, Qin Yu was currently chatting with Ho Fei, Kuro Li Er, Zixia, Hongyan, Bai Ling and the rest. At the moment when they were chatting happily, a heavenly god's maid ran over. Master, there's a group of people outside. They say that they're from the Floating Snow City. The heavenly god's maid's words caused Qin Yu and them to grow quiet. Floating Snow City. Qin Yu frowned. Ho Fei, Kuro and them also looked to each other in bewilderment. As for Li Er, she was the first to stand up. Her face was filled with excitement. People from the Floating Snow City. Brother Yu, quickly. Jiang Li excitedly pulled Qin Yu and rushed toward the entrance of the Purple Mystic Mansion. Jiang Li, who was extremely anxious, brought Qin Yu with her and teleported to the front courtyard of the Purple Mystic Mansion. Jiang Yan and that Chunyu Ro. Qin Yu spread out his new cosmos's spatial energy. In an instant, he had clearly observed the group of people from the Floating Snow City. This group of people were practically all from the Jiang clan. They were all people who possessed extremely deep feelings for Jiang Li. Qin Yu grew confused. Jiang Fan's character was something that Qin Yu was able to sense from their years of interaction. This Jiang Fan was not someone who would easily admit defeat. Furthermore, the conflict between him and Qin Yu was truly not small. As a sage emperor, this Jiang Fan ought to be someone who cares about his face. Logically, he ought to not allow these people from the Floating Snow City to come over. Why is that? As Qin Yu was pondering, Jiang Li, who stood beside him, immediately shouted, Brother Yu, quickly come over. Don't just stand there. My mother, you know her, right? Qin Yu separated himself from his thoughts. He immediately smiled and slightly bowed. I pay my respects to Lady Mother-in-law, Qin Yu thought in his heart. Regardless of what this Jiang Fan is thinking, he has at the very least done a great deed. Jiang Li had been thinking about her relatives and friends the entire time. Qin Yu had been feeling of guilt the entire time. And now his heart was feeling at ease. Qin Yu, hello. When Qin Yu saw Qin Yu saw him. She also felt heavenly God's heavens. Back then, she had tried every possible means to make Zhou Xian her son-in-law. What was the outcome? The 4 great god kings of the Thunder Punishment City, including Zhou Xian who had become a god king later on, were all killed. And now, a youngster of the younger generation by the name of Zhou Qing had become the Thunder Punishment City's sage emperor. Qin Yu's heavenses was. Qin's the status is now. Qin's emperors was now. Perhaps only the 3 great exalted celestials would be able to suppress Qin Yu. Big brother Qin Yu, you should know most of these people, right? This is my and big sister Li Er's older brother, Jiang Jun. This is also my and big sister Li Er's older brother. His name is... At this moment, Jiang Yan was extremely lively. She was unceasingly introducing people to Qin Yu. Among the people that came, Qin Yu knew most of them. After all, Qin Yu had stayed in the floating snow city for a relatively long period of time. Even for people that he did not know, Jiang Li had also chatted with Qin Yu in the past. Now that Jiang Yan introduced them, Qin Yu immediately recognized them. The arrival of the people from the floating snow city had caused the entire Purple Mystic Mansion to become lively. However, in the entire Purple Mystic Mansion, the happiest person would likely be Jiang Li. As for Qin Yu, he had a question in his heart the entire time. Qin Yu walked to Jiang Lan's residence by himself. Yesterday, Jiang Lan had chatted with that Cheho Yuan for a long time. Today, he had been resting the entire time. Even when the people from the Fog City came, he merely greeted them at the beginning. Later on, he returned to his residence. Uncle Lan, it's me. After walking to the entrance of the courtyard, Qin Yu said, Little Yu, come in. Jiang Lan's voice sounded from the courtyard. At the same time, the entrance to the courtyard opened by itself. Qin Yu walked into the courtyard. At this moment, Jiang Lan was sitting by himself under an ancient tree and drinking wine. When he saw Qin Yu walk in, he smiled and said, Come drink with me. Qin Yu smiled and sat down. He accompanied Jiang Lan and chatted casually. Then he drank several cups of wine in succession. Uncle Lan, I have a matter that I wish to ask you. Qin Yu placed down his wine cup and asked Jiang Lan. Jiang Lan nodded with a smile. Seeing your expression when you came, I knew that you had something in your heart. Go ahead, what is it? Qin Yu slightly nodded. He said, Uncle Lan, the temporal law contained within the all-people seal is extremely profound. You've only trained in the new cosmos for 4 years. Even if time was accelerated by 1,000,000 times, it would merely be 4,000,000 years. 4,000,000 years to comprehend the temporal law is far from enough. And now, Uncle Lan, you've come out. Could it be that you've already succeeded? Oh, Jiang Lan smiled. Little Yu, according to what you said, if I am unable to comprehend the temporal law, then I cannot come out? No, Qin Yu promptly said. Uncle Lan, you know that is not what I meant. Seeing Qin Yu's appearance, Jiang Lan smiled. Enough, I was merely joking with you. I know what you mean. That's right, to only train for such a short period of time, it is indeed a bit short. In terms of the temporal law, my progress is also not that great. Uncle Lan, I wish to know, did the arrival of the people from the floating snow city have anything to do with you? It was you who went to the floating snow city to persuade them, right? Qin Yu asked. Jiang Lan looked to Qin Yu. He did not say anything. I was able to guess it. Uncle Lan, right after you came out from the new cosmos, you went to the floating snow city. On the second day, this group of people from the floating snow city arrived. Thus, I had no choice but to think of you. Qin Yu smiled and said, Uncle Lan, you've done a great deed. However, I am very confused. Uncle Lan, how did you manage to persuade that father-in-law of mine? Moving him with emotion and reasoning, Jiang Lan said casually. He then drank a cup of wine. Moving him with emotion and reasoning? That simple? Qin Yu did not believe it at all. How could Qin Yu not know about that Jiang Lan's temperament? For the sake of obtaining the opportunity to become an exalted celestial, he did not even care about his daughter, and did not hesitate to sever his relationship with his own brother. How could such a decisive person be so easily persuaded? Uncle Lan, you'd best not deceive me. Qin Yu stared at Jiang Lan. After being stared at for a long time, Jiang Lan smiled and shook his head. Well then, child, I'll tell you. Actually, it's not that big of a deal. I merely gave the Back Earth seal, and all people seal to Jiang Lan. That big brother of mine had been looking forward to the Back Earth seal, and all people seal for who knows how long. When I gave them to him at once, he would naturally be extremely grateful. Thus, it was only natural for him to do this. Qin Yu was startled. Uncle Lan, you said that you gave the Back Earth seal, and all people seal to Jiang Lan? At this moment, Qin Yu did not even address Jiang Lan as father-in-law. Qin Yu had guessed that Uncle Lan must have paid some price in order to persuade him. However, never had he expected that it was actually these two incomplete exalted celestial spiritual treasures that contained the opportunity to become an exalted celestial. Uncle Lan, if you were to possess these Back Earth seal, and all people seal, then you might be able to become an exalted celestial. You possess two of them. Thus, the possibility of you becoming an exalted celestial is much greater than that Luo Fan. How could you? Qin Yu felt unreconciled. Jiang Lan smiled indifferently and said, They're merely the Back Earth seal and all people seal. They are not very useful to me. I also do not have any desire to become an exalted celestial. It does not matter to me whether or not I become an exalted celestial. Uncle Lan. Qin Yu frowned. Little Yu, oh, that's right. That all people seal was given to me by you. You wouldn't be angry that I gave it to someone else, right? Jiang Lan said to Qin Yu with a smile. At this moment, Qin Yu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This Jiang Fan. Qin Yu was unable to refrain himself from feeling resentment. He was furious. Back then, this Jiang Fan, for the sake of that bit of opportunity to become an exalted celestial, disregarded his brotherly relationship with Uncle Lan, disregarded his father-daughter relationship with Li Er, and even disregarded the enormous advantage that I possessed in the groom's search, and insisted on making that Zhou Hua his son-in-law. A while ago, he had repeatedly targeted me. He had even ruthlessly attacked me. At that time, when those god kings and sage emperors were trapped in the new cosmos, his life and death were under my control. However, in the end, for the sake of Li Er, I still let him go. Originally, I had thought that he would at least care about that affection. However, who would have thought that when Uncle Lan went to persuade him, he actually refused? He only agreed after Uncle Lan gave him the Back Earth seal, and all people seal. This sort of person. Qin Yu had already started to look down on this Jiang Fan from the bottom of his heart. Originally, he had at least recognized him as his father-in-law. However now, Qin Yu did not wish to recognize him at all. All people seal, Back Earth seal. Didn't he feel that his hands were hot from accepting them? Uncle Lan, did he ever refuse them? Qin Yu looked to Uncle Lan. Uncle Lan was slightly startled. Back then, Jiang Fan had indeed accepted the All People seal, and the Back Earth seal without refusing them. Well then, little Yu, Jiang Fan truly wanted to become an exalted celestial. After obtaining the All People seal and the Back Earth seal, he naturally would not be willing to give them up. It's nothing much. After all, I also do not wish to become an exalted celestial. It's nothing much to have that big brother of mine fulfill his wish. Jiang Lan said with a light smile. Jiang Lan's attitude was extremely good. He did not mind at all. Become an exalted celestial? Qin Yu started to laugh. Become an exalted celestial? Uncle Lan, even if he were to obtain the All People seal and the Back Earth seal, he would still not be able to become an exalted celestial. This is fate. He does not have that fate. Jiang Lan was stunned by Qin Yu's tone. Qin Yu's tone contained absolute confidence. Little Yu, are you that certain? Jiang Lan was confused. Qin Yu lightly smiled. He recalled the words that he had said to his second brother Lin Meng during the 100 days of Little C's birth. Lin Meng had said that none of the god kings on the exalted celestial mountain would be able to become an exalted celestial. At that time, the utmost North Sage Emperor Jiang Fan was on the exalted celestial mountain. Uncle Lan, you'll know when the new exalted celestial is born. Jiang Fan, he will not be able to become an exalted celestial. Qin Yu said indifferently. Merely, the current Jiang Fan was carrying an endless amount of expectations. He was currently earnestly comprehending the temporal laws, through the back earth seal, and all people seal. Time passed. In a blink of an eye, close to 8 months had passed. Inside the purple mystic mansion, at this moment, a large group of people were gathered outside of Ho Fei's courtyard house. Over 1,000 people from the purple mystic mansion were all discussing with each other in low voices. Inside the courtyard house was Ho Fei, Qin Yu and them. Today, Ho Fei's 2 wives, Zixia and Hong Yun, were actually going to give birth at the same time. At this moment, Ho Fei was anxiously pacing back and forth in front of the house. His 2 fists were tightly clenched. Occasionally, a red light would flicker in his eyes. The energy in his entire body was slightly trembling. Fei, sit down. Don't worry too much. Qin Yu said. Ho Fei glared at Qin Yu. Am I able to sit down? Immediately, the group of people in the courtyard house all started laughing. Merely, they all consciously lowered their voices. They feared that they would disturb the 2 women who were about to become mothers. Amen. Qin Yu frowned. Whoosh. Qin Yu disappeared from the courtyard house. In the surrounding Kuro, Jiang Li Yifeng, Cheho Yuan and them were all surprised. At this moment, Qin Yu appeared on a path in the purple mystic mansion. In front of this path, a purple-robed middle-aged man was walking over. His figure was somewhat thin. However, he appeared to be proud and aloof. Occasionally, a red light flashed in his eyes as he swept his gaze over Qin Yu. Senior Unfettered Exalted Celestial has graced us with his presence. This junior is unable to contain his joy. However, I wonder what senior has come here for? Qin Yu slightly cupped his hands and said. The person who had come was the Unfettered Exalted Celestial. At this moment, Qin Yu already had a feeling in his heart. The reason why the Unfettered Exalted Celestial had come here was most likely related to Ho Fei. In the sky above the divine realm, in an extremely high space. This space was completely isolated from the rest of the divine realm. The other divine kings were simply unable to discover this place. In this independent space in the sky above the divine realm, various colored auspicious clouds were floating. In the depths of the clouds there was a palace. At this moment, a person was standing outside of the palace. His hawk-like eyes were looking downwards. This person was the Thunder Punishment Exalted Celestial, who had a grudge with Qin Yu. Junior brother has finally gone to see his precious son. The Thunder Punishment Exalted Celestial sneered. However, it will be soon. 5 years, there are still 5 years left. 5 years later, the new Exalted Celestial will be decided. After that, I will be able to kill Qin Yu without any scruples. Qin Yu, I will allow you to live for another 5 years. A cold light flashed in the Thunder Punishment Exalted Celestial's eyes. Chapter 685. At this moment, the purple mystic mansion was bustling with noise and excitement. Outside of Ho Fei's courtyard, there were layers upon layers of people surrounding the courtyard. Men, women, old and young were all happily chatting with each other. Move aside. Its utmost supreme third elder, move aside. Seeing Qin Yu bringing a middle-aged man over, the over 1,000 people gathered outside the courtyard consciously opened up a path for the 3 of them. Qin Yu brought the Unfettered Exalted Celestial and walked into the courtyard with a smile on his face. Right after Qin Yu and the Unfettered Exalted Celestial entered the courtyard, Kuro, Cheho Yuan, Jiang Lan and the rest who were in the courtyard looked over in confusion. Wah! 2 resounding cries of infants sounded in succession. Everyone present displayed joyous expressions. Qin Yu took a glance at the Unfettered Exalted Celestial beside him. Even though the Unfettered Exalted Celestial was extremely calm, the current Unfettered Exalted Celestial's eyes were filled with excitement. His gaze was completely fixed on Ho Fei, who stood outside the courtyard. Creak. Once the door opened, Ho Fei directly rushed in. As for Qin Yu, Kuro, Jiang Lan and many others, they were chatting and laughing outside. Truly rare. Never would I have expected that Ho Fei's 2 children would be born one after the other. Kuro gasped in admiration. And at this moment, Jiang Lan's gaze was on the unfettered exalted celestial. His expression slightly changed. Little Yu, may I know who this is? Although Jiang Lan asked, he managed to guess who it was from his expression. 6 quadrillion years ago, the unfettered God King had participated in the first descent of the exalted celestial mountain. In the end, he became an exalted celestial. At that time, Jiang Lan had naturally come to know this unfettered God King. Merely compared to back then, the current unfettered exalted celestial's appearance had changed slightly. Most importantly, his temperament was also different from back then. Jiang Lan, we have not met for 6 quadrillion years. You actually don't recognize me anymore. The unfettered exalted celestial said with a light smile. At this time, Qin Yu very consciously waved his hand and closed the door of the courtyard. It was best not to let those juniors outside know about the unfettered exalted celestial's identity. Otherwise, who knew how noisy it would be? Uncle Lan, this is senior unfettered exalted celestial, Qin Yu said from the side. Unfettered exalted celestial? Kuro, Bai Ling, Zuoqiulin, and the others were all shocked. One had to know that heavenly venerables were elusive. Even for the thunder punishment exalted celestial, many people were only able to see him through the water screen. In the entire God realm, there weren't many people who had the fortune to be able to talk to a heavenly venerable directly. What is unfettered exalted celestial doing here? At this moment, Jiang Lan was confused. However, on the surface, Jiang Lan still bowed respectfully. Never would I have expected for it to be senior unfettered exalted celestial. Senior, please sit here. The group of people who were originally sitting had already stood up. Who would be so thick-skinned as to dare to sit when the celestial venerable was standing? The unfettered exalted celestial displayed a smile on his face. With a light smile on his face, he waved his hand and said, Jiang Lan, there is no need for you to be so courteous. The reason why I have come today is because, haha, big brother, I have a son and a daughter. Quickly come and see. Ho Fei's voice suddenly sounded through the entire courtyard. Everyone looked toward the entrance of the house. Ho Fei rushed out with a baby in each hand. He was so excited that his eyes were flickering with a red light. A boy and a girl? Kuro was the first to rush over. Immediately, Jiangli, Bai Ling, and a large group of people all rushed over. Seeing the 2 babies, they were all extremely happy. Everyone in the courtyard displayed joyous smiles on their faces. This unfettered exalted celestial has likely come because of the birth of Li Er's 2 children. Qin Yu thought in his heart. He looked to the unfettered exalted celestial beside him. At this moment, the excitement of the unfettered exalted celestial was something that, not to mention Qin Yu, even Qin Yu's youngest son, Qin Shuang, was able to tell. The unfettered exalted celestial's gaze moved over the 2 babies. His eyes were filled with excitement. However, the unfettered exalted celestial restrained himself and did not rush over. Big brother. Ho Fei raised his head and looked over. Seeing that Qin Yu did not go over, he could not help but frown. Big brother, why are you standing so far away? Come quickly. Take a look at these 2 babies. Haha. Ho Fei's gaze merely swept past the unfettered exalted celestial. Although he was surprised to see this person whom he had never seen before, Ho Fei did not mind. Hong Yun and Zixia walked out from the house. As Empyrean deity experts, giving birth did not affect their bodies too much. Scarlet Cloud directly called out, Monkey, give me Xing'er. Ho Xing. That name doesn't sound good. My dear wife, why call such a cute daughter Ho Xing? Listen to me and call her Ho Tian Tian. Tian Tian, isn't that great? Ho Fei immediately said. PFF. Immediately, everyone started laughing. Qin Yu and Kuro also felt helpless. Before the birth of the child, they had already discussed it. No matter how many names they came up with, Ho Fei did not want them. In the end, they even shamelessly came up with Ho Tian Tian. Might it be possible for me to give this child a name? The unfettered exalted celestial, who had been in a state of excitement the entire time, finally gathered his courage and said these words. Hou Fei's eyelids jumped. He took a glance at this unfettered exalted celestial. Who are you? Why are you naming my child? The unfettered exalted celestial was startled. As for the large group of people in the courtyard, they were all startled. Everyone knew that the person who had come was the unfettered exalted celestial. However, Hou Fei actually spoke to the unfettered exalted celestial in such a manner. This was outrageous. Fei, this is Senior Unfettered Exalted Celestial. Do not be rude. Jiang Lan immediately shouted. Unfettered Exalted Celestial? Hou Fei's heart jumped. Heavens, he had poked a hornet's nest. Hou Fei immediately bowed in a well-behaved manner. Junior pays his respects to Senior Unfettered Exalted Celestial. Merely this child is my child. As her father, it is fine for me to name her. There is no need for Senior to trouble himself. There's a good show to watch. Qin Yu remained silent. Qin Yu was able to guess that Hou Fei was an orphan that Jiang Lan had discovered. And now, this unfettered exalted celestial might be related to Hou Fei's origin. The unfettered exalted celestial's lips did not move. Instead, he said via divine awareness voice transmission. Hou Fei, I am your father. Boom! Hou Fei felt as if the inside of his head had exploded. His mind went blank. Only after a long while did he regain his senses. He was completely frightened. At this moment, the excitement of obtaining his son and daughter had completely disappeared. Instead, he was shocked. Hou Fei looked to the unfettered exalted celestial with a sharp gaze. The unfettered exalted celestial looked to Hou Fei with an expectant gaze. His gaze was very amiable. He was looking forward to the moment when Hou Fei would call him father. Haha! Hou Fei suddenly started laughing. He handed the two children in his hands to Zixia and Hong Yun respectively. Then, he pointed to the unfettered exalted celestial and said with an expression of not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Senior Unfettered Exalted Celestial, you said you're my father? Haha, don't joke around. I, Hou Fei, am an orphan. Although I would occasionally think of my parents, I have not fallen to the point where I would recognize someone as my father, just because someone randomly came to tell me that he's my father. The entire courtyard was silent. Father. Practically everyone was frightened by Hou Fei's words. Earlier, that unfettered exalted celestial had likely only sent a divine awareness voice transmission out of fear of being affected. And now, Hou Fei had said it out loud. This had truly frightened everyone. This unfettered exalted celestial is Hou Fei's father? Qin Yu was not too surprised in his heart. Monkey, don't talk nonsense here. This is not a joke. Kuro immediately reminded from the side. The corners of Hou Fei's mouth curled up. He glanced at the unfettered exalted celestial and said, Mixed hair bird, I'm not joking. It's this senior unfettered exalted celestial who is joking with me. At this moment, although Hou Fei was smiling, his gaze was very strange. The unfettered exalted celestial frowned slightly. He said, Hou Fei, I wonder if we can have a private talk? The unfettered exalted celestial did not wish for his family matters to be known by the surrounding group of people. After all, he was an exalted celestial. His status was revered. He also wanted face. Private talk? We are neither relatives nor friends. What's there to talk about? If you want to talk, then talk here. The people here are all my relatives and friends. They are my good brothers. If you want to talk, then go ahead. If you don't want to talk, then forget about it. I still need to accompany my two children. Hou Fei's tone was not courteous in the slightest. At this moment, Qin Yu was able to sense that Hou Fei's state of mind was fluctuating violently. The current Hou Fei was completely different from the usual Hou Fei. If the usual Hou Fei were to see the unfettered exalted celestial, how could he possibly dare to speak? Everyone, you can leave first. Do not disturb them here. Qin Yu immediately called out to the surrounding people. Jiang Lan, Yifeng and them also sensed that the atmosphere between the unfettered exalted celestial and Hou Fei was a bit special. Tactfully, they all greeted the unfettered exalted celestial and then left the courtyard. In the end, even Zixia and Hong Yun left the courtyard with the two infants. Fei, Talk openly and honestly with Senior Unfettered Exalted Celestial. Clarify the matter. Qin Yu instructed Hou Fei. Got it, big brother. Hou Fei nodded to Qin Yu. Qin Yu slightly bowed to the Unfettered Exalted Celestial, and then left the courtyard. After Qin Yu left, only Hou Fei and the Unfettered Exalted Celestial remained in the courtyard. On a stone stool not far from the courtyard, Qin Yu sat down. Big brother, is the monkey truly related to the Unfettered Exalted Celestial? Kuro also sat down on the stone stool beside Qin Yu, and immediately asked Qin Yu. Don't worry, we'll know soon. It's useless to guess now. Qin Yu frowned. At the same time, Qin Yu's new cosmos's spatial energy was completely spread out. It covered the entire courtyard. The other God Kings did not dare to use their divine awareness to investigate for fear of being discovered by the Unfettered Exalted Celestial. However, Qin Yu was not afraid. His new cosmos's spatial energy was able to clearly observe everything in the courtyard. As Qin Yu observed everything, he thought to himself, Exalted Celestial, if you want to talk, then talk. Don't fight. No matter what, Qin Yu would not tolerate his brother being bullied. Within the courtyard, Hou Fei and the Unfettered Exalted Celestial were both standing. In fact, based on appearance alone, Hou Fei and the Unfettered Exalted Celestial were rather similar. They were both relatively thin. However, Hou Fei had a tyrannical aura about him, while the Unfettered Exalted Celestial was very indifferent. If you have something to say it quickly. Hou Fei said directly. The Unfettered Exalted Celestial was not angry at all. He said, Hou Fei, I am your father. There is no doubt about that. From your birth until now, I know most of the things that have happened to you. I can also use images to replay those things for you to see. Hou Fei, if I didn't constantly observe you, how would I know what happened to you in the past? After all, even exalted celestials do not possess the ability to calculate the past or the future. The Unfettered Exalted Celestial said with a smile. If it wasn't for the fact that you're related to me, as an exalted celestial, how could I constantly pay attention to you? Hou Fei was startled. He must admit that what the Unfettered Exalted Celestial said was very reasonable. Only Jiang Lan and Jiang Li knew about the things that had happened in his childhood. As for the things that he had done with Qin Yu, only Qin Yu and Kuro knew about them. If the Unfettered Exalted Celestial wanted to investigate the things of the past, he would have to soul-search Jiang Lan, Qin Yu and them. Things of the past? Who knows what abilities the Exalted Celestials possess? I am also not an Exalted Celestial. With just this, it is impossible for me to prove that you're my father. Furthermore, whether or not you're my father is completely unrelated to me. Hou Fei had an evil smile on his face. Senior Unfettered Exalted Celestial, from my childhood until now, I have experienced a lot. I have fought with my big brother and mixed hairbird in the mortal realm sea region, in the immortal mansion. I have fought one battle after another. From the mortal realm to the divine realm, I have walked step by step. In my entire life, I do not have the word father in my memories. Whether or not I have a father is also meaningless to me. I only thought of myself as someone who jumped out from a stone. Hearing what Hou Fei said, the Unfettered Exalted Celestial's complexion turned pale. Enough, Senior Unfettered Exalted Celestial. You are an Exalted Celestial, a high and above Exalted Celestial. There is no need for you to tease me here. To be honest, for you to suddenly say that you're my father, I am truly a bit displeased. That is because I do not like others to control me. I like to be free. Without a father to control me, without a mother to raise me, this sort of life is pretty good. Hou Fei smiled to the Unfettered Exalted Celestial. Then he walked toward the entrance of the courtyard. Hou Fei, the Unfettered Exalted Celestial shouted. Enough, did you not understand my words? I'll say it again. Regardless of whether or not you're my father, it is unrelated to me. After he finished saying that, Hou Fei directly opened the courtyard's entrance and walked out. Ah, son, daughter, let your father hug you. Hou Fei's loud voice sounded again. Chapter 686. Time passed. In the blink of an eye, nearly 5 years had passed since the birth of Ho Fei's 2 children. In these 5 years, the unfettered exalted celestial had come to the purple mystic mansion dozens of times. Senior unfettered exalted celestial, Fei is accompanying the 2 children in the back garden. Qin Yu said to the unfettered exalted celestial with a smile. Thank you. The unfettered exalted celestial smiled at Qin Yu. Seeing the back of the unfettered exalted celestial, Qin Yu sighed in his heart. In these 5 years, the unfettered exalted celestial had never given up. However, no matter what method the unfettered exalted celestial used, Ho Fei simply ignored him. On the contrary, the 2 children of Ho Fei were quite fond of the unfettered exalted celestial. Brother Yu, don't think about it. Fei knows what to do, Jiang Li said to Qin Yu with a smile. Qin Yu nodded with a smile. Oh, that's right. Brother Yu, your new cosmos should be reaching perfection soon, right? Jiang Li suddenly recalled this matter. Hearing that, Qin Yu couldn't help but smile. Qin Yu had always been paying attention to the development of the new cosmos. I reckon there's still a year before it reaches perfection, Qin Yu said with a smile. Jiang Li couldn't help but reveal a joyful smile. When you reach perfection, I reckon you'll have a way to save Qin Shuang. Sigh, that child is becoming more and more rebellious. His own cultivation progress was too slow. On top of that, his father and mother were both god kings. His brother's cultivation progress was also very fast. Naturally, Qin Shuang also felt very uncomfortable. After a long time, it was normal for Qin Shuang to become rebellious. However, Qin Yu and Jiang Li had no way to deal with the rebellious Qin Shuang. It'll be fine after another year, Qin Yu thought to himself. After about an hour, the unfettered exalted celestial walked out from the back garden. At this moment, the unfettered exalted celestial had a happy smile on his face. However, Qin Yu knew very well that the unfettered exalted celestial was happy because he was playing with the 2 children. In the past 5 years, unfettered exalted celestial had almost given up on making Ho Fei acknowledge him as his father. Qin Yu, goodbye, Heavenly Premier Unfettered said with a smile. With the unfettered exalted celestial's ability, it was easy for him to enter the purple mystic mansion. However, every time he came or left, he would inform Qin Yu. After all, Qin Yu was the owner of this place. Qin Yu and Jiang Li immediately stood up. By the way, Qin Yu, I have something to tell you. Exalted Celestial Carefree suddenly thought of something and looked at Qin Yu with a smile. In about 3 to 4 months, the new Exalted Celestial will be born. The birth of a new Empyrean? 3 to 4 months. Qin Yu and Jiang Li were shocked. Qin Yu suddenly thought of many things. The time was determined. And now, the 3 portions of the Living World Seal were respectively in the hands of Jiang Fan and Luo Fan. It would be extremely difficult for either of them to gather all 3. Could it be that the new Exalted Celestial will be decided by the person behind the Exalted Celestial? Qin Yu thought in his heart. I am merely telling you this information. Well then, farewell. The unfettered Exalted Celestial immediately teleported and disappeared from the purple mystic mansion. As for Qin Yu and Jiang Li, who had received this information, their hearts were surging. Qin Yu immediately decided to gather Uncle Lan, Zhou Qiulin and them. This information was something that he must definitely tell them. It was actually only a short 3 to 4 months until the birth of the new Exalted Celestial. This information had indeed shocked the god kings of the purple mystic mansion. However, compared to them, the other god kings of the divine realm, such as the Azura god king, did not know about this. Regardless of whether it was the Azura god king Luo Fan or the utmost northern regions floating snow cities Jiang Fan, they were both wholeheartedly researching the incomplete Exalted Celestial's spiritual treasure. In the misty space that Jiang Fan had set up, time was accelerated by 5,000 times. To Jiang Fan, accelerating time by 5,000 times for a long period of time was a bit difficult. Jiang Fan sat cross-legged in the air. 2 seals were floating before him. One was gray, and the other was golden. After training for all these years, Jiang Fan had only managed to slightly improve his time acceleration. As for time stop, it could be said that he did not have any comprehension. To Jiang Fan, becoming a God King through comprehending time reversal could be considered as an impossible task. A month passed. In a blink of an eye, 3 months had passed. Inside the purple mystic mansion, Big Brother, according to what that unfettered exalted celestial said, the birth of the new exalted celestial ought to be in the near future. It might even be possible for it to be today. Kuro said from the side. Qin Yu and Jiang Li smiled. Well then, Xiao He, could it be that you want to become an exalted celestial? Qin Yu looked to Hou Fei with a smile. I do not care about becoming an exalted celestial. Merely, I am curious as to who would become the exalted celestial after all these years, and all these god kings that have died. Kuro said with a smile. Boom! Suddenly, a loud explosion sounded. After the loud explosion, suddenly, the sound disappeared. All the sound in the entire divine realm disappeared. For those that had yet to reach the God King level, even their soul had stopped moving. Only the God Kings and the exalted celestials were able to think. Suddenly, an extremely beautiful music sounded in the minds of the God Kings. All of the God Kings in the divine realm appeared to have been hypnotized. One by one, they began to fly toward the direction of the exalted celestial mountain. No, there was still a God King in the divine realm that was awake. Qin Yu, who had fused with the cosmic origin energy and was in harmony with the new cosmos cosmic origin energy. His soul was extremely awake. Although that music was peculiar and beautiful, it was unable to shock Qin Yu. Strange. Qin Yu's new cosmos spatial energy covered the entire divine realm. This divine realm seems to have been affected by time stop. Only the God Kings are unaffected. Qin Yu discovered that the wind in the divine realm had stopped. The waves in the ocean had also stopped. All of the heavenly deities and demons were motionless. Even their gazes were lifeless. Evidently, at this moment, their souls had stopped moving. They no longer possessed the slightest ability. Qin Yu saw that Jiang Li Zuoqilin Kuro, Yifeng Jianglan, Cheho Yuan, Jiangxing Tanglan Putai Hong, from the purple mystic mansion. All of the God Kings had flown out. Even the God Kings are being controlled? Qin Yu was shocked. Qin Yu immediately pretended that he was being controlled, and also flew out with these God Kings. Under the observation of Qin Yu's new cosmos spatial energy, the other God Kings of the divine realm, such as Jiang Fan from the utmost northern region's floating snow city, the Blood Sea Queen from the western sea, the Azura God King from the Azura Sea, Muyu from the eastern sea, and other God Kings also flew out from all directions of the divine realm. Whoosh! At practically the same time, all of the God Kings teleported to the surroundings of the exalted celestial mountain. Qin Yu also teleported to the outside of the exalted celestial mountain. Seeing the millions of miles tall scarlet exalted celestial mountain before him, Qin Yu was thinking in his heart. The entire divine realm seems to have been affected by time stop. However, none of the God Kings felt it. They were even able to teleport. Why is this? Why is that music so miraculous that even God Kings are able to control it? Qin Yu was puzzled. At this moment, all of the God Kings of the divine realm, over 30 of them, were gathered in the surroundings of the exalted celestial mountain. Other than Qin Yu, none of the other God Kings were completely awake. Buzz! The red membrane that covered the entire exalted celestial mountain, which was known as the God King prison, suddenly disappeared. The other God Kings all flew towards the canyon, where the spiritual treasure origin cauldron was located. Qin Yu naturally followed after them. When all of the God Kings flew into the canyon, the red membrane actually reappeared. At the same moment when the red membrane reappeared, the music that sounded in the minds of the God Kings also suddenly disappeared. All of the 30-plus God Kings present had completely woken up. What's going on? Many God Kings cried out in alarm. What a great technique! Qin Yu sighed in his heart. All of the people of the divine realm, who had yet to reach the God King level, were in time stop. Furthermore, their soul fluctuations were all still. In the entire divine realm, only these God Kings and exalted celestials were awake. This is the exalted celestial mountain. It would seem that it is the same as last time. All of us God Kings have been brought here. This also means that the exalted celestial is about to be born. Bloodsea Queen Shui Yin sneered and said. Within the canyon, the 30-plus God Kings were standing at various locations. As God Kings that were born 6 quadrillion years ago, all of them were experienced. Soon the God Kings calmed down. Exalted Celestial Big Brother, who do you think will be the Exalted Celestial? At this moment, Kuro was also extremely excited. We'll know in a while, Chinyu said with a smile. However, at this moment, very few God Kings in the canyon were able to smile. That was because practically all of the God Kings were feeling nervous in their hearts. They were all hoping that they would become the God King. Times the billions of deities of the divine realm, and the hundreds of thousands of heavenly deities were all in silence. At the center of the divine realm, on the enormous scarlet-red exalted celestial mountain, the God Kings were all anxiously waiting. The spiritual treasure origin cauldron was the same as before. It was not moving at all. Blue sky seal. Luofan suddenly shouted anxiously. All the God Kings in the canyon couldn't help but look at the Azura God King. A cyan-colored seal flew out from Luofan's body and flew towards the spiritual treasure origin cauldron. One of the God Kings reacted quickly and actually grabbed the blue sky seal. Bang! Right after he touched the blue sky seal, that God King vomited blood from the shock. Luofan also rushed over and grabbed at the blue sky seal. Following a muffled sound, Luofan was knocked flying. His complexion was deathly pale, and blood was flowing out from the corner of his mouth. What's going on? I have already refined the blue sky seal. Luofan was at a loss. All of the God Kings present were puzzled. The blue sky seal that was clearly refined was not under Luofan's control. This was something that none of them had ever encountered before. Last time, when the exalted celestial mountain descended, the unfettered God King was secretly helped by the floating feathers exalted celestial, and directly obtained the various parts of the exalted celestial's spiritual treasure. Naturally, he became an exalted celestial in the end. However, it was different this time. The 3 portions of the exalted celestial's spiritual treasure were obtained by 2 people. This is interesting. Chinyu looked at the blue sky seal that was floating above the spiritual treasure origin cauldron and started to laugh. The floating blue sky seal was faintly emitting a cyan light. However, it did not allow any of the God Kings to grab it. Back Earth seal. A gray-colored seal flew out from Jiangfan's body. How could Jiangfan possibly allow his treasure to fly away? Even though he had learned from the Azura God King's mistake, Jiangfan still impatiently grabbed at it. Bang! Without exception, Jiangfan was seriously injured. All of the other God Kings did not attack. They watched as the Back Earth seal flew toward the spiritual treasure origin cauldron. In the end, the Back Earth seal also floated above the spiritual treasure origin cauldron. It stood side by side with the blue sky seal. Brother Jiangfan, never would I have expected that the Back Earth seal had actually ended up in your hands. Shintayin exclaimed. Now, we only lack the all-people seal. Many people looked to Chinyu. That was because they knew that Chinyu had obtained the all-people seal in the end. Whoosh! The all-people seal that was emitting a golden light flew out from Jiangfan's body. This time around, Jiangfan did not try to grab it. That was because he should know that it was impossible for him to stop it. Many of the God Kings were shocked. The Back Earth seal and all-people seal were actually both in Jiangfan's hands. Blue sky seal, Back Earth seal, all-people seal. At this moment, these 3 seals were floating close to each other. They were emitting light in all directions unceasingly. It has been nearly 40 years since the descent of the exalted celestial mountain. Now the exalted celestial spiritual treasure, the living world seal, shall be born. A new exalted celestial shall also be born. A cold and indifferent voice resounded through the entire exalted celestial mountain. All of the God Kings were immediately shocked into silence. Big Brother who spoke? Kuro sent a voice transmission to Chinyu. Not only was Kuro confused, the other God Kings were also confused. However, they all understood that the person who spoke was likely related to the person who had unconsciously brought all of them to the exalted celestial mountain. 3 seals gather, living world seal appear. That voice was extremely cold. Buzz! The 3 floating seals started to shine brightly. The cyan, gray, and golden-colored lights were revolving unceasingly. In the end, they gradually fused together. All of the god kings present were staring at the 3 seals. In the end, the light gradually weakened. A palm-sized seal appeared above the spiritual treasure origin cauldron. That palm-sized seal was quietly floating in the air. Only a faint layer of light was flowing on its surface. Living World Seal. Exalted Celestial Spiritual Treasure, Living World Seal. The eyes of all the god kings present had turned slightly red. With the appearance of the Living World Seal, a new exalted celestial shall also be born. Among the god kings of the divine realm, the one who is most qualified to become the new exalted celestial is. All of the god kings held their breaths. However, Jiang Fan, Luo Fan and them were so nervous that their bodies were trembling. Their palms were sweating. They were all waiting for that name. God King Cheho Yuan. That cold and indifferent voice spoke the answer. However, this answer had stunned Luo Fan, Jiang Fan, the Blood Sea Queen, and a large group of people. Cheho Yuan, how could it be him? Jiang Fan, Luo Fan, the Blood Sea Queen and them were all unable to believe it. We have fought for so many years, how could it be him in the end? After fighting for so many years, after so many god kings had died, the person who became the exalted celestial in the end was actually someone who did not participate in the competition? They had fought for so many years, what was it for? Everything was merely fishing for the moon in the water. In the end, it was all for naught. At this moment, Cheho Yuan was still in a state of shock. As for the Living World Seal, it directly flew to the top of Cheho Yuan's head. 3 colored rays of light shot out from the Living World Seal and covered Cheho Yuan's entire body. At the same time, all of the god kings felt that the space where Cheho Yuan was located in had instantly accelerated. What an astonishing time acceleration. At the very least, it's several 100 million times. The degree of time acceleration caused Qin Yu's heart to tremble. All of the god kings were looking at Cheho Yuan, who was covered by the 3 colored rays of light. After fighting for so many years, the person who became the god king in the end was Cheho Yuan, who had returned to the divine realm. At this moment, Qin Yu did not know that the Thunder Punishment Exalted Celestial was waiting in the sky above the divine realm. He was waiting for Cheho Yuan to completely become the Exalted Celestial. The moment when Cheho Yuan became the Exalted Celestial would be the moment when the Thunder Punishment Exalted Celestial would act. Today's update is complete. As for tomorrow, it would be the end. Thinking about the end, even Tomato was confused. He did not dare to believe that it was actually going to be the end. Haha, 11 months plus. Every single detail of the 11 months plus had appeared in Tomato's mind and caused him to sigh endlessly. However, it would still end tomorrow. Where there's a beginning, there must be an end. You're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.